Hello, everyone. Oops, let me remove this guy. He's not here yet. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. Very excited about today's lineup. We have a very full show, a lot of great guests. We got joining us soon will be Daniel Bessner and Ben Burgis, as well as Nando Villa, my alleged co-host. And now, though, we have with us, joining us. Okay, I had my YouTube on. Now we have joining us Eugene Puryear, who is an author, a journalist. He's been on the show before. He has a new show and Breaking the Set News.
Is it Breakthrough News?
Sorry, I can never get this right.
Well, it's okay. Breaking the Set, the fantastic Abby Martin show.
Abby Martin show.
Always happy to be affiliated with Abby Martin.
Yes. Breakthrough News, which is like a BTN, I believe, on Twitter.
At BT Newsroom. You're getting close.
BT Newsroom. You see? All right. Close. Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? This is I wanted to give you the mic and give you the chance to really, I'm centering you and giving you a voice so I don't explain it. I don't want to host-splain from one host to another. But, and we have actually Nando Villa here. Should we bring you in, Nando? Nando's like walking around. I'm going to bring him in because he does this because I'm usually the one walking around.
I know.
Okay, Nando, welcome.
I'm unprepared. I'm sorry. I'm running.
That's okay.
To go
That's okay.
You want me to kick you out for a little? This is a real role reversal, though. I'm always doing this.
I know.
All right. I'll kick you out unless people like seeing this behind the scenes thing.
Behind the scenes. Yeah. Exclusive content.
It really is. Yeah. He's pulling a Katie Halper. But Eugene, tell us your thoughts about, and you did really great coverage of in Minneapolis, and people probably saw that video and we played it on this show. Tell us your thoughts about Kamala Harris. I saw you had a tweet that was responding to Mehdi Hassan. I will call that up right now.
Kick me out for a second and then I'll come back in on a different computer. All right.
One second. All right. Let me see. All right. Kick Nando out. All right. Let's see. Looking for your Mehdi thing. But yeah, why don't you just share your thoughts?
General thoughts. Sure. Yeah. No, well, that Mehdi, I had said I wasn't going to say anything, and then I ended up doing all these things. Anyway, I mean, I think the Kamala Harris pick is predictable when you sort of look at the forces that are behind it. I mean, I think, Biden has already set himself up as a quote unquote transition president. So obviously whoever he named as vice president was going to be a major signal as to what at least the alleged future of the Democratic Party was going to be. And I think Kamala Harris is a pick that accords, 100% with the, subset of the American elite, center left people who still see the Democratic Party as their road to power. And a unified Democratic Party of some sort is what they need to get there. So someone like Kamala Harris, who checks a lot of boxes, she checks, sort of the pro-elite boxes, the closeness to the tech industry, the soft pedaling of the mortgage crisis. And then, as I indicate there to some degree with this tweet, the long history of involvement with the system of mass incarceration. And I think, you can already see my tweet coming through, Lori Lightfoot making a number of comments about this. Kamala Harris, the right choice for this moment, the importance of Joe Biden to overcome the issues of the country. Also, Lori Lightfoot, the same mayor whose police presided over the knocking out of the front teeth of a young activist who said that she would not defund the police and thought they needed more resources, who has implemented a brutal crackdown on protest, drawing up the drawbridges so you can't even protest in downtown Chicago, and equating private property as somehow akin to human life. And these are the sorts of people who view Kamala Harris as the right choice for the moment. But on the same token, she also represents, again, for, not just that sort of center-left elite I mentioned, but I think the center-left elite adjacent aspirant subsets of the middle class who see in Kamala Harris the path to success that they have been told and engage in their own careers is the way to make it to the top, to find some niche in the system that allows you to exploit whatever sort of capabilities and talents you have to quote unquote change things from the inside. And I think that symbolic representation is important to people in that bracket because, however much we see black places in high places, the top levels of America are by and large still mainly white, mainly men. And I think people who want to succeed in that vein see quite a bit in Kamala Harris. And then I think also, she has tried to really perfect this politics of, some sort of lip service to obviously the majority of people who consider themselves Democrats who have, relatively quote unquote left wing, I would say quote unquote realistic positions on issues like healthcare. I mean, she pretended to have Bernie Sanders healthcare plan until she got accused of having Bernie Sanders healthcare plan, right, and then had to row it back to make the big donors happy. But coming out today with her statement, everyone needs $2,000 a month and things like that. I mean, as much as I think most of people who consider themselves quote unquote on the left have been panning this, I think that if you look at her political profile for the past 2 or 3 years, it's been very much in line with trying to pander towards that base. Now, it hasn't worked that well. Obviously, we see in her presidential campaign, most people saw that as relatively phony. She changed her tagline 18 different times. So how that'll work here, I don't know. But I just say all that to say, for Biden to say, I'm a transitional president, to then pick Kamala Harris, I think speaks very much to what the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, I don't know, you can't really call it a wing, it's the people who control the Democratic Party. The wing is everyone else. Has, they want to lift up, they want to continue, basically they want to keep the gravy train going. Like that's what it comes down to. And Kamala Harris is sort of probably the best placed to fit enough boxes to keep the gravy train going ultimately. And, she has a pugilistic attitude in sort of her political persona, which I think in this political environment is the type of thing that can potentially resonate. I think we saw with her attack on Joe Biden, she has at least some ear for sound bites. The food fight that, come on, America, people don't want to hear a food, what was it? A food fight they want to, or something. I don't know. I forget it now.
That was Mayo Pete, right? Who said that?
Mayo, it was, and I think it was the best moment of the first debate in a way, because it was so ridiculous how everyone was yelling to get attention. But you got to blame that on the networks and the terrible way they set up these debates. But be that as it may, that's my general view. I mean, I think that obviously her record is atrocious. I mean, this is someone who fought to keep innocent people in prison, who, ridiculed people who opposed the criminalizing of parents for their kids being truant. Someone who, as I mentioned earlier, gave Steve Mnuchin a pass in his destruction of home ownership for, thousands of people in California, and then, completely misrepresented her record in the national mortgage settlement where, ultimately she didn't do anything that she said she was going to do. You even look at Wall Street investors saying this is great. You look at, there was an article I saw today about how people are expecting her to be a silent voice for big tech in the broader administration. She's been on board with Russiagate since the very beginning, and used those tropes to maximum effect when she could, including in the smearing of Tulsi Gabbard for exposing her real record. So I think that overall it's predictable in the direction that a Joe Biden establishment, center left ruling class type of candidate would want to go to keep things moving the way they're moving.
I'm going to bring in Nando, if that's okay.
It's your show.
Yeah. Okay, Nando, here we are. Welcome. You guys haven't met before, right?
No.
I don't believe.
No.
Okay, so Nando Villa, Eugene Puryear.
No, thanks for having me.
If you have any questions, of course, Nando, feel free. I have more, but do you have any, or do you want me to keep going?
Go ahead.
All right. So do you actually think it was a strategic choice? Like, well, first of all, I should ask you this. Like, is your, and by the way, I just want to read what your tweet was. So Mehdi Hassan tweets, you'll see lots of attacks on Harris. You'll see lots of attacks on Harris's prosecutorial record. Actually, Nando, can you do Mehdi Hassan or no?
I've never tried it, but you actually do a pretty good Mehdi.
All right. He's pretty.
Put me on the spot like that.
All right. That's how.
It has to be natural. I understand.
Baptism by fire. No, Nando did Brian Williams when on Demand, and it was great.
Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Not to be confused with White Hawk Down.
Dodging bullets.
All right. So you'll see lots of attacks on Harris's prosecutorial record in the coming days from left and right. Some sincere, some cynical, some justifiable, some not so much. But never forget her opponent tear-gassed protesters and declared, and declared when the looting starts, the shooting stops. And then Eugene said, idiotic take, Biden-Harris ticket will be endorsed by every Dem mayor whose cops repressed demonstrations during the current uprising. Many of these people will appear openly as campaign surrogates. They are also the same people who have enabled the police murders that inspired it. So that's a good take. Well, before I ask you, I was going to ask you another question, but what is your position on Trump v. Biden, Eugene?
Well, I mean, I definitely, my position in terms of what I would do in the election, will definitely not vote for Joe Biden. I mean, I'm going to vote for Gloria La Riva, and I think everyone should. My general position on this issue, I don't think I've ever voted for a Democrat in a presidential election, is, I think there's a lot of arguments around this, but from my point of view, I think the most important thing is, it really is not elections that shape the moment. It's the moment and the movements that sort of shape the social, cultural, economic sort of underpinnings of this that shape the dynamics of the election. So I think sort of first and foremost, approaching the election is like, this is the end all be all. If we don't get Trump, then like the whole world is going to collapse.
If we don't get rid of Trump, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't get rid of Trump, that the whole world is going to collapse. I mean, I think the way to sort of change that and address that, it seems strange that you would say that the way to do that is to sort of vote for Democrats when, I mean, what are they saying? We'll return to the Paris Climate Accord. Well, every climate scientist said, well, that's not enough. The world will still burn. So that's just one small example of sort of, okay, well, you're saying Trump is going to drive us off a cliff, but it seems at just a different speed. So I don't know if that's exactly what you need. I think lesser of two evil votings, whatever people want to call it. Let's just take every election since 1984 where we said lesser of two evils, and the actual political register of the country has only moved to the right, whether the president has been a Democrat or a Republican. And I think that's sort of telling in terms of the broader dynamics. Like, why has things started to change and move in a different direction in the country? It's not because the Democrats are better. It's because of Occupy Wall Street, the Black Lives Matter movement, the immigration movement, the re-rise of strikes in this country, and labor organizing that has, ultimately changed everything. I mean, why is it that Trump is even in trouble now? Because he cleared out Lafayette Park and enraged the whole country, and there is this massive re-energizing of the movement in the streets that changed the whole political dynamic in the country. And it wasn't Joe Biden in his basement in Delaware that did that. So, first and foremost, I think in an election, I want to represent what I really believe in. And I definitely don't put this idea that if you don't vote for Biden, somehow you're more responsible. I mean, in my opinion, a lot of people who say that, like, how civically engaged are they outside of voting? And I think that answers a lot of questions. But even if they are, I mean, that's one. I mean, I think two, I think you have to ask yourself the question, what does it really mean to even embrace a logic that sort of starts to pit people against each other? Well, it's going to be worse for this person or worse for that person. Well, it might be the same for someone else, or, whatever it may be. And I think this whole idea that we have to evaluate our political landscape based on the sort of scales of justice of who's got the worst oppression at any given time is also, another sort of non-movement way to approach it. So, I mean, that's where I stand on it. I understand that some people feel it's an existential crisis. I do not feel that, it is an existential crisis with the election. I think we are in an existential crisis that I don't think either of the major parties going to solve. So ultimately, at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, are we going to just keep letting things go the way they are and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again of the lesser of two evils? I don't know. Everyone's talking about Charlotta Bass today, the first Black woman to run for vice president, great person. She was a third-party candidate, the Progressive Party. She had supported Henry Wallace in 1948. The whole reason the phrase civil rights even exists is because in 1948, this is well documented, Clark Clifford, one of the top Democratic strategists, goes to Harry Truman and he says, many Black people, almost all of them, are going to vote for Henry Wallace, and also many labor people, and we will never win in that climate, and we have to do something. So the Democrats, a party of white supremacy, supporting the segregation in the South, Harry Truman comes out, he does a campaign rally in Harlem, he comes out with the To Secure Our Civil Rights program and platform, and of course he vetoes the Taft-Hartley Act. Now, of course, when he got into presidency, he reversed all of that, but the only reason he did anything is because they were actually afraid that people were going to do something, right, that they were going to organize millions, potentially tens of millions of people and try to win and maybe even win. I mean, I think that is a powerful lesson when we think about what is the way to have an impact. So I don't know. I don't want to go on forever and ever on this, but
no, Eugene, you make some very good points. You've clearly done your reading and your research, but it's just a shame that you're doing Russia's bidding for them. And
it's true.
That's why you're wearing that red shirt.
It's you probably don't even know it, but you're doing it. So
I'm being duped. It's tough though. Yeah. How do we know what's true and fake anymore? With Facebook and everything.
They really got, and I understand it's tempting because they've created a lot of illusions of racism to get people excited.
Yeah, no, Russia invented racism in America. And
if we didn't have these Russians, who would even know about this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, great. Well, Daniel Bessner, we have you here too, and we're waiting for another person. But Daniel, I'll bring you in. We can keep this chat going if that's cool.
Keep
then we'll
going,
get into
baby.
because Daniel, welcome.
Hey, nice to meet. Hey, Gene. Hey, Nando.
Daniel Bessner, a historian. And do you say "n" or which do you go by?
I am an historian.
You do. And
because I'm from New York.
Right, and historian. Got it. Yeah.
Story. I don't know.
And what's your hot take on this? So Eugene, you would not in swing state would not vote. I mean, I'm not putting on the spot or judging you, just to clarify.
No,
you,
I would.
In a swing state, wouldn't vote for Biden. Okay, and to summarize, if I can, it sounds like you were saying that we are in an existential crisis, but voting for Biden is not the existential solution.
That's a good summary. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would
use that. Use that. You can have that.
Astute. I mean, I completely agree with that. And my biggest problem with all the discussion around now is about how democracy in this country has been defined downwards as voting. And I think a lot of our political discourse is reflected on that. And that's, I'm a historian, so that's a very...
You're an historian, dumbass.
And so that really is a phenomenon that started in the 1930s in this country. And I think it's related to the fear of a mass politics and ordinary people. Because before the 30s, there's a lot of discussion about economic democracy or social democracy. But when the rise of mass political parties, like Gene was just saying, the organization of people of color, Black Americans, et cetera, made a lot of elite Americans, again, mostly white, mostly male, and I might add mostly Christian at the time, not even Catholic, mostly Protestant Christian also at the time, get a real fear of the masses. So there was a concerted ideological project to define democracy as voting, right? Like you get to essentially choose your elite. And I think this became a constitutive idea of modern liberalism, which is why this whole vote or die, or remember rock the vote, vote or die, or if you don't vote, you're a bad person, which I get on Twitter all the time, is a really basically shitty way to understand democracy. And I think one of the things that people our age are trying to do, if a bit inchoately and without a particular direction, is to re-expand the definition of democracy to include things beyond voting. So I would say the important thing is not to make voting the moral act that it has been made under modern liberalism, because I think that's actually profoundly disempowering in a sense, because it limits political action to elections.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about that.
I gotta say, when Comrade Obama and his comrades in the Democratic Party murdered Bernie Sanders, I was so angry that I was burn these motherfuckers to the ground, and actually it was our late friend Michael Brooks who kind of talked me. He made the only compelling argument I've heard so far for voting for the awful Biden Harris ticket, which is the narrow grounds that if we're ever going to build anything meaningful in this country, it will come on the back of a revitalized labor movement, and that without at least even as awful as a standard Dem would be to staff the NLRB with standard Dems is better than just the awful Republicans, obviously, and that would allow a little bit more space for a revitalized labor movement. Literally everything else is I'm not even super convinced, but literally every other argument falls on flat ears to me.
Well, I'll only say, it is a compelling argument. I mean, I think it's indisputable that the NLRB will be in a better position with a Democrat than a Republican in president. I mean, and you can look at the situation around the classification of independent contractors is probably the best example of that. My counterpoint would be is that the labor movement made the most gains when there were no labor laws, ultimately. And the labor laws are a reflection of the fact that people weren't afraid to break the law. And you look at the context of labor law right now, I question whether or not it's possible for the labor movement to truly exceed with, bans on secondary picketing, bans on political strikes. And I think ultimately those are things that are going to have to be done and ultimately will be illegal, will be broken up by the cops, which is why 100% cops should not be in any sort of labor federation. And so while for sure I think that it's a valid point to make in terms of protection of existing labor rights, I just think if we sort of then carry that question on to what needs to happen for a revitalized labor movement, I think that conversation is more about how do we sort of start to breach the the wall of legality, and how do those of us who are not in those unions offer real support and solidarity that makes that possible and easier for people to make very tough decisions. You think about the transit workers in 2005 and the hit they took for breaking the Taylor law. And I think that, that is, to me, that conversation. So again, I don't know if that ultimately goal is going to be facilitated by voting for Biden. But again, I don't think that we can, and I'm not going to eat somebody's lunch for feeling like, this temporary gain is what I need to fight for. I just think that we have to put it in a realistic context, and at least somebody, we got to fly the red flag, if you will, for someone to have something to rally around. And I think the dejected people who don't vote, the people who came out for Obama in 2008 and 2012 and have never voted again, but people who want to be engaged in the political process, that there's someone who isn't a sellout, that doesn't seem to be having Stockholm syndrome in a basement like Bernie Sanders. I don't know what's going on with him, with the way he's supporting some of these people. I mean, it's one thing to support Biden, but Kamala Harris knows how to get it done. I don't know about that. And I think that's why people are skeptical, because even people who you could believe in, it feels like, well, damn, I thought I believed in this person. And then here you are, sort of collaborating. And I think we have to have that sort of, just no compromise core to our radical movements, our movements in the streets, and our movements for social change, to help draw in people who maybe don't even believe that we can succeed or struggle.
It is just so remarkable that after all the George Floyd protests, they chose Kamala. It's incredible. You gotta the largest social uprising definitely in my lifetime, and then nothing. You get nothing. You get nothing. That's my offer. It's like that line in The Godfather. My offer is nothing. You get nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's highlighting also the problem, which raises some really difficult strategic problems about what does a radical movement mean in a presidential system. Presidential systems are designed to be extremely conservative, and the United States is the oldest one in the world. And it's actually one of the only ones, if people know the history of Latin America, where most other presidential systems are, that there hasn't been subject to a coup or some sort of over.
Well, we had a little civil war.
Yes, we had a civil war, right?
Which was partly a breakdown of the presidential system.
Right.
It was loggerheads of the legislative and executive branch.
It was blogging heads.
It was blogging heads.
Yeah. And so, we did have a civil war, and you could also say the New Deal was a revolutionary sort of transformation of the state, which actually created, of course, the legal structures that Gene is, I think, rightfully lambasting, because law is ultimately epiphenomenal of power, and without the power,
what does that mean?
That
literally, what does that word mean?
Law is a function; it reflects power relations. So the existence of the NLRB is a tool that reflects power on the ground, and it is weak because labor is weak.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It will be strong if labor is strong. So I think that's what Gene is rightfully highlighting, is that power building is the crucial element, much more so, I would agree, than any election.
Doesn't the Supreme Court, though, have a lot of power? Not to sound like a lib, but even if it's not sufficient, obviously, and we have to keep our eye on the, beyond that, and it's used to constantly prevent progress because it is kind of a blackmail tool, does it not actually shape reality in certain ways?
It absolutely does. I mean, it's probably the most undemocratic. That and the Senate, the Supreme Court and the Senate are the most consciously undemocratic by design elements of the American political system. And the Supreme Court, it's more like a referee on what it's become on enormous social issues, which is absolutely not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, interpretation of Constitution. But again, this relates to the conservatism of the presidential system and the constitutional system. It's so difficult to actually make new constitutional amendments that a lot of these social progress questions wind up resting on interpretation of existing law, which changes over time, and I think, again, reflects power relations on the ground, right? The Supreme Court is just a function of the power that actually exists in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the referee analogy is so apt. I mean, I think I think some of the same dynamics I've been speaking about are at play. I mean, you think about Earl Warren, right? And we associate the Warren Court with, most of the progressive things, obviously the Civil Rights Act, Miranda warnings, many, many different things, of course. Civil Rights Act, excuse me, Brown v. Board of Education. So ultimately, and many other civil rights decisions. But, if you look at the history of Earl Warren, this is a guy who was a white supremacist. He was the member of, I forget the name of this group, it's the Native Sons of Golden, California or something, which was just some totally out there white supremacist group. I just learned this last month. It totally blew my mind. He was one of the main advocates of Japanese internment. And as I also learned about a month ago, because I was researching the Supreme Court issue, the role that he played was to put in place this new classification system of land owned by Japanese people to target them essentially for these laws that were against land ownership. So it's also considered one of the largest thefts of land in the history of the country outside of the Native Americans, this land stolen from these Japanese Americans as part and parcel of the broader piece around the internment camps. And I say all that just to say I feel pretty confident that when President Eisenhower appointed him in 1952, he was maybe he was expecting something a little bit like Brown. I don't think he was expecting, what ultimately was sort of a full-on liberal onslaught on jurisprudence. And this is a white supremacist, but obviously he was smart enough because the Supreme Court, I mean, Daniel's so right, it's not democratic. Just like the Federal Reserve, it's a political institution that has its own constituency and its own imperatives. So if you're a Supreme Court justice, they say the same thing about John Roberts, right? That his judicial philosophy is, where is the country on this? And this is why he's been able to rule on some things on LGBTQ rights, similar to Warren, similar to even Rehnquist in the going the other way, is the people have to respect the law if the country is going to be stable. The country has to be stable for people to make money. And so the Supreme Court has to always have its eye on, what are people going to accept or not accept, and how do we expand or contract the boundaries of the interpretations to sort of meet the needs of the moment. And so, again, I think, if you really want to affect the Supreme Court on issues of racial justice, I would say you have to create much more trouble around issues of racial justice and strike much more fear into the hearts of the, core of jurisprudence, that if they don't do something, that things they might not like will become the order of the day.
Good trouble.
Good trouble. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, look, it was ironic but true. Whatever we can say about John Lewis, that's a valuable contribution. That change cannot be made unless people are angry at you about it. And if it's not considered to be making trouble, you probably aren't making much change.
Right. Yeah. Well, Eugene, thank you so much. The crowd has gone wild for you. We'll bring you back.
Yeah. Fan favorite.
It was an honor. Yeah. It was an honor. Yeah. Great to be here with you guys. Nando,
yeah,
Daniel, great to meet you.
Take it easy, bro.
See you soon.
All right, everybody, take care.
Bye. Okay. Basically, he said exactly what I was going to say, so I don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
Because he basically stole all my lines.
Yeah.
We are bringing into the chat someone who I've been wanting to have on for a while. The host of the podcast, Newly Born Podcast, Give Him an Argument. Ben Burgis. Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Really happy about it. Yeah, so I do realize I was cheating on this with Jacobin that just finished, but I feel bad about that, but I'm excited about this.
It's okay. I'm too nice. I should have kept you in the online doghouse for longer, but I let you in. So welcome. And we were going to talk about this Lenin, Marx controversy, Michigas, what have you. But anything you want to say about what we were just talking about? Anything you want to say about the Kamala pick?
Yeah, I mean, what I caught at the end there from Eugene made a lot of sense to me about where the Supreme Court is at and why it makes those decisions. And also, I mean, I do think we should be honest, that even if annoying liberals we hate, say things that doesn't always make them false. And we would be
bunching. We would be bunching.
That's right. For example, right? That's clearly something they say that's right. Nobody was protesting anything in the Obama years because what would there have been to protest? But they're not wrong that there are actually really important like that the Supreme Court doesn't always use the strategy for enforcing ruling class power that Eugene was talking about, right? That it does depend who's on it, that they might try other strategies that, that we'd like a lot less. Certainly National Labor Board Relations Board appointees, that if you get a second Trump term, it's stacked with people who are crusading to destroy what's left of public sector unions. And, especially if you want to be a socialist, if you don't have an organized working class at the base of it, everything else is just kind of howling into the wind. So, so that does matter a lot. And I agree with all that. I mean, whatever. Kamala sucks. She's awful. That's, I think that should almost go without saying in this context. I think really the only thing that's worth, saying about that is that it does say everything about what's wrong with how so many people have reacted to the post George Floyd moment, when we should be having really focusing on attempts to demilitarize the police, to do something about the underlying, economic conditions, that lead to, this strategy of police militarization in the first place. And some of that has happened, but there's been a disappointingly heavy emphasis on fighting certain kinds of symbolic side battles, and renaming streets, things like that. Not all of which is bad.
Elizabeth Warren got the amendment to rename the bases away from Confederate. So they increased the Pentagon budget, but the bases will not be named after Confederate soldiers.
She really did that, Warren?
Yes, massive victory for social progress around the world.
Pocahontas, did she get Pocahontas way?
When some 16-year-old Pashtun villager gets murdered by a drone, he will be comfortable in the knowledge that it didn't fly out of Stonewall Jackson base.
Yeah, it's gonna be Pocahontas base now.
Yeah, Pocahontas base. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's exactly the thing, right? We're gonna give more money to the military, but there are gonna be no bases based on named Confederates.
It's perfect. It's perfect. I love Warren. I love Elizabeth Warren. She's my favorite.
Yeah, Italian chef, peak Warren. And it's the same thing that Kamala Harris is a supervillain of mass incarceration, but she's a black woman, so it's a symbolic victory.
And South Asian also. She's Tamil.
It's complicated. There's a whole debate raging right now about whether...
Which is exactly what we should always spend our time debating, is how to properly racially classify everyone.
Well, her dad is a Marxist, apparently. Did you guys know this?
Yes, one of the prominent scholar.
That's
hates everything about her. What's going on there?
I think she's the only candidate since the 60s to not have a Harvard or Yale degree, I think. Is Kamala.
Oh.
Berkeley and Oberlin, I think. Something along. Maybe not Oberlin, maybe Oxford. She went to Berkeley for law school, but yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Our ruling class is expanding. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Not all nominees. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about basically this was inspired, this topic. This chat was inspired by a tweet that I saw that Daniel, you tweeted out. And you tweeted, and guys, get ready in the comments. You're going to flip out. A lot of my people are going to flip out. Ready? You tweeted, this nonsense over Lenin and Marx makes me miss Michael Brooks, who would have been able to cut right through this bullshit. So, Daniel, can you explain to us what you were referring to? Just set it up a little bit, and then we can get into it.
Sure. And Ben, if you want to jump in. So basically what I was saying is that we have these conversations on the left repeatedly. I'd say I've been a socialist for about 12, 13 years now. And it's a conversation that we've repeatedly had on the left, which is over to what degree what do you take from Marx and what do you take from Lenin, and what is the meaning of that? And what I think is interesting about this conversation, and what I think Michael was so good at, was in cutting through the bullshit. So the question is essentially, in my understanding, and Ben or Nando or Katie, if you disagree, let me know. It's about the role of social theory in life, right? And so for a disempowered left, a left that has been, I think, meaningfully out of power since Debs was arrested during World War I, and since he won a fair bit of the popular vote in 1912. So what I would call a legitimate social democratic alternative has been out of power for a long time. Theory, as opposed to actual politics, has been the locus of struggle, right? So I think these figures like Marx or Lenin, and we could probably add people who are more or less popular at different times, of Proudhon or Bukharin or Bakunin or whoever it may be, or Zizek today, get this totemic status where like people used to identify with punk or metal, they now identify with like Marx or Lenin or Zizek.
Yeah.
And to me, and then I'll stop talking. But to me, this is ultimately a pathology of not being in power. And like any historical figure, there are good things that Marx said, and there are things that I disagree with. That, you know, Lenin didn't do all the best things when he was in power, but he also had some really important ideas about political strategy. And so I think by anointing particular figures to essentially totems, which, you know, in my opinion, goes against the science of historical materialism. It's lesson number 1 is to historicize.
It is flex, fucking Bessner flexing, dude.
I mean, I've read
fucking
a lot.
hey.
But I do think it's just important to put these figures in context, and then even more important is to recognize your own context of what the 2020 United States actually is. What are the power structures? How does power actually work in this society? And maybe, you know, references to the 1848 revolutions in Central Europe, or a reference to, you know, a late peasant Russia in 1916, 1917 aren't necessarily apropos. So I don't know. To me, that seems pretty common sense. But Ben, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the sort of hook about I think how Michael might have approached it. I think part of it is just by obviously not being on some sort of team about which historical figures are being stand, and being
Social Democrats killed Rosa.
yeah.
Shut up! You were shut up.
Yeah, right. Like he would just see that like that is nerd shit, right? You know, that's like why are you talking about this right now? Yeah. You know that rather than doing that, right? You know, I think would one, right, be like in whatever defense he gave, certainly of Marx, right, which he certainly would do, right? You know, that like he would also say, yeah, look, I'm not going to whitewash anybody. Let's be real about the history, right? He was always really good about that. And then also just by kind of refocusing things on what actually matters, right? Like what one part of what Daniel just said that I think is worth kind of underlining and circling a couple times is that even though, look, I'm enough of a left history nerd, I've got opinions about Lenin, you know, I would even argue that there are things that we can learn from that matter, right? But the conditions that we're facing right now in like trying to build up like any kind of social democratic anything in the neoliberal hellscape of America in 2020 are really, really, really different from this like crumbling semi-feudal state in 1917, you know, at the border of Europe and Asia. Like that's like just a very different set of circumstances. And so, you know, we could have a discussion about what you can learn from, you know, from both the accomplishments and the mistakes of the Bolsheviks about, you know, how democratic institutions should work in socialist societies and all that. But also, if you're getting mad at each other over what your take is about Lenin and 2020, that's a little odd.
You know, I'm originally from Spain, so the version that I get in, you know, talking about Spain is there's very extensive and factional debates still about the Civil War and whether, you know, the Stalinists kind of crushed a social revolution, anarchist social revolution, and, you know, whether you're like Team Orwell or like Team Hemingway or, you know, all this kind of annoying shit, which is again like
at least that's 20 years more recent.
Yeah,
true.
I know. I was going to say,
but I mean,
let's not, you know, throw away the baby with the bathwater.
Right. True. But and it just seems like the biggest, what you're talking about, the conditions of America in 2020 and really the world in 2020 is that the prospect of political violence is just like nil, like zero, you know, whereas like, you know, it was plausible that a handful of like, you know, crazy Bolsheviks in 1917 could topple the Tsar violently. It's impossible to imagine that today. I mean, there is just such overwhelming firepower that it's just even contemplating the fact is ridiculous. And you still see people talking that way, and you're like, shut up. You know, there's no way you're gonna like confront this kind of thing. We have to find a new way. And
to two-finger that very quickly, Nando, it wasn't also just like the Bolshevik Revolution is an apotheosis of 30 years of political violence against aristocrats that culminates in World War I, right? There, between 1890 and 1914, something like 800 European aristocrats are assassinated.
Yeah.
Right, a decades-long social revolution that culminates in the greatest war in human history up until that point. So I think it's also just underlining that, and also with all the police violence and all, you know, the total destruction of the American left that the American state successfully accomplished beginning 100 years ago.
Yeah. And Bessner, you can two-finger me anytime. Just buy a girl a drink first, you know?
But
that's sweet. Yeah, I was just gonna say, right, like that I think it's also a sign of powerlessness, right? That like that when you can't actually, like when you feel, look, I mean, we had a chance to at least get like a good, solid social democratic, you know, presidential candidate, and you know that went up in smoke, and you know Corbyn, you know, in the UK, you know, same story, right? That like, you know, the sort of more achievable things that we were actually in a position to maybe have a shot at doing, like didn't pan out. So a lot of people, I think, kind of retreat to this fantasy of like recreating this like peasant, largely armed revolution, you know, in this completely different society under completely different circumstances as like a compensatory thing.
But I mean, also, let's just set this up, because as much as we're mocking this internecine kind of battle, we've also forgotten that there are people who are not just online. And this was started, I believe, right, with a Nathan Robinson tweet.
Yeah.
So Ben, can you set that up? Or Daniel, whoever wants to.
Ben,
Yeah. I mean, I think the part of this just has to do with Nathan.
Who you just did something with? You wrote something with him? Debating something with him?
Yeah, actually, just co-wrote a review of Glenn Beck's book, Arguing the Socialist.
Right,
you read that shit? Like,
it's right there behind you.
It is actually.
Oh wow!
It's it's not very good. But
zero stars, 1 star. What's
I'm gonna have to award that negative stars. But it was, it's also whatever. It's one of these things, you know. You have to make your own history, but not under circumstances of your own choosing. We live in a world where people like Glenn Beck, you know, have a much bigger audience than we do, and so you do have to address what they say. And so the review that Nathan and I wrote of that book is going to be in the new print issue of Current Affairs. And I should say, you know, I mean, I have some disagreements with him about some intra-left things, but like also he's like very good at stuff like that, the sort of like takedowns of like the nonsense of the right. He's a very like clear and forceful writer, good polemicist. So all love to Nathan.
Yeah.
But so I think sometimes people get mad at him because he doesn't consider himself a Marxist. You know, I guess he stands Team Bakunin, and he's talked about this in his book and various other places. And you know, I disagree with him about that. My position is that we shouldn't refuse to have anything to do with anybody who's got like a bad take on 19th century socialist factional disputes.
Right.
But you know, I think that he was feeling defensive about this, and he started, you know, putting all this stuff out there about, you know, the crimes committed by Lenin's government in Russia in like the teens and 20s, and people were in turn getting mad about that because, you know, who is this, you know, ridiculous foppish Menshevik who's assailing the honor, you know, of Lenin, and there's some stuff about Marx in there, and Noam Chomsky, and this kind of set up like this kind of several days of people arguing about this stuff that Daniel was responding to.
Right. It's a bit meta, right, though, because I mean, I'm guilty of this too. It's like, we're like, why are we talking about this? We shouldn't talk about this. Who cares about this? Let's do an episode on that.
Well,
I mean, I'm doing
no, but I think that there's certain aspects of it are worth talking about. And I think especially Marx, you know, because like I think that you know, his analytical framework, I mean, at least to me, still stands. You know, the central tenets of it 100% still stands, you know, as a sort of way to interpret events, you know, to seeing history as a class struggle, you know, and seeing the working class as the only agent for social change, the only potential agent for social change, nothing else. You know, I think those things kind of still stand, and they have helped me interpret events like in the current time, like tremendously. Like once you kind of understand that, you're like, oh, everything just kind of like fits better than, you know, but you can see when someone like doesn't have ideology and sort of gets frustrated and confused by events. And it's profoundly disempowering to them. And that's what ideology does. It gives you kind of the tools to interpret current events in a way that is empowering rather than disempowering, because, you know, it helps you process it in a way that's more coherent, and therefore allows you to see potential solutions. Without it, you're fighting a war without any weapons.
I think that's totally right. And I just want to say that Marx is a genius, one of the great thinkers of all time. Of course, goes without saying. And I think I call myself a Marxist, you know, and I think it's important to have, like Nando said, an ideology. I think the problem comes when two things happen. One, when people like really get mad and vicious with each other, which is just such an anti-solidaristic thing to do, which happens online, and we've all been, you know, the objects of such derision and whatnot. So I think these sorts of, again, it becomes a problem when one identifies in a very emotional attachment way with a figure, so much so that to criticize that figure is to criticize oneself, which is all, we all do it in various ways. But I think we should be working against that as part of a political movement where the goal to be political for me is to be about distribution of resources, not about the personal. And so this moves us a little bit away from that, which I think is problematic. And then second, just again, as a historian, I think it's really important to historicize these figures and to understand them in their contexts. So I think I want to recommend to people who are listening a book called Revolutionary Refugees by Christine Laddick, which discusses that community of German exiles in London, which included, you know, Marx and all these other figures in the 1840s, 1850s, and 1860s. And I think reading that book, in addition to reading things like the Manifesto and later Capital, is really crucial to understand that Marx is not someone who exists outside history and is diagnosing capitalism like he's a scientist, but he's someone who's profoundly connected to the currents of his time, and that we need to understand those currents in order to understand Marx, and then we need to appreciate that for our own time. We need to understand our own currents, which are very unique, because all historical moments are unique.
And how could one of you describe, these terms get thrown around a lot, like tanky, trot. I don't understand what being a trot means, except for you are very critical of Assad and you get very mad, not hater, Bashir al-Assad, and you get very mad at everyone else for not being mad at him or not being like condemning him constantly. Or repudiating Rania Khalek or Max Blumenthal. That's my experience of present day trots. I don't know what it means to be a Trotskyist today. Tanky, trot, what else? PSL, Maoist, all of those things. Like, I want a definition like of them historically and then today, what it means.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, so trots, right? Trotskyists, you know, there's a... above and beyond denouncing Rania Khalek, I mean, I guess the historical tradition there goes back to, you know, some of the stuff when Nathan's talking about like bad things that the Soviet, you know, government did, that when there was this sort of consolidation of the Soviet Union from being this kind of like complicated experiment that was maybe starting to go wrong to like going like really, really wrong, right? You know, with Stalinism, you know, this kind of repressive, you know, one party state where you couldn't organize real trade unions or do lots of other things that you know, Marxists, you know, would want. Then, you know, Trotsky was the leader of the opposition, and so and then founded his own little movement that unfortunately never really went anywhere. And then there are like 50,000 like offshoots of it, you know, that have existed since then. And I think it actually goes back to what Daniel was talking about at the very beginning, about like sort of having a little bit of a sense of perspective about what's relevant in what way when, because I think you can find people who call themselves, you know, Trotskyists, and honestly, as much as like I think Trotskyists have historically been right about some really important things like Stalinism, right, being bad, it's also the case that this is kind of like the mother lode of this tendency to define yourself politically by like which historical figures you feel which way about, or which debates from the 1930s you feel which way about, instead of about the conditions that you're actually in at present. Because I think you can find trots, right, who think almost anything, right, about what's going on at present, because like doing a close reading of what Leon Trotsky said in 1938 isn't really going to tell you anything necessarily about what you should think about debates that are happening in 2020.
And also the frame of Trotsky is literally the Soviet Union. He's literally arguing about what the Soviet Union of 1936 should do vis-a-vis like Germany. This is what Trotsky is like actually arguing. So it's absurd to deracinate him from his context. And I think this is also related to the Cold War history of various third worldist movements associating themselves with various Soviet figures. So that's my understanding of why it's discussed in relation to Syria, is that some of these groups within Syria literally identify as Trotskyists. So there's been a melding over the last 10 or 15 years between what was like a tanky/trot to what is like actually something real on the ground. What its relation to Leon Trotsky is, I would guess, very little, but that's I don't know in detail. And tanky just is related to someone extremely on the left, and it refers to when the Soviet Union sent in tanks to crush the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. Those who supported the tanks, the Soviet Union, were considered tankies,
right?
Because this is the big break in Western communism, that most people after 1956 in the Anglo-American context were no longer part of the Communist Party, unless you're Eric Hobsbawm, because Stalin sent in tanks to crush the Hungarian Revolution, and it was the final exclamation point on Stalin, or the Soviet Union, not Stalin, Khrushchev sent in tanks, sorry, but it's the final exclamation that Khrushchev, who took over, who solidified power in 56, is not going to be like a democratic efflorescence. So that's what tankies refers to. You literally refer to you support the tanks. Now Mao, there's a whole thing on Mao. Should we do a quick thing on Mao?
Yeah, definitely. This is great.
Okay, so very briefly on Mao. So like what happens in the global South after 1945 is like the big question for the decolonizing world is how you're going to associate with the two big powers, the United States or the Soviet Union, right? And so Mao is a communist leader. China wins in October 1949 and presents sort of this third way, this sort of party-oriented, hyper-disciplined form of state communism, effectively. And so this becomes a third alternative that some nations, or particularly some political parties, some factions within the global South, begin to ally with. It's basically my understanding of Maoism. There are differences on like large levels of theory and the direction of capitalism, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's primarily about political strategy in actually existing history and related to the role of the party and the role of the state in daily life. And that's what basically Maoism has come to refer to.
There was a German soccer player who played for Real Madrid in the 1970s who showed up and called himself a Maoist, and I always thought that was really funny. I'm like, cool.
Was that a soccer strategy? What does that mean?
I don't know. He was just like, I'm a Maoist.
He had a lot of drills.
Yeah, and it was like very shocking in like 1975 Spain. Franco.
Oh my God, was Franco pre or post Franco?
Like that was the year. He showed up like a year after. And it was like
remember, the 70s is the age of like the small armed group, like the Red Army fraction and all these groups throughout Latin America. So a lot of these groups are also like self-identifying with particular tendencies, right? So a lot of this relates to like the history of the revolutionary left in the 70s and how it became like a type of radical chic amongst the American bourgeois and elements of the American bourgeoisie, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's also worth pointing out that like even within the kind of like capital C communist movement, these positions, are like pretty marginal by like 1980, right? That like that all of any like basically any like Western democracy that actually had like a big communist party that had like members in parliament and stuff, by like the 70s, 80s, they'd like completely drifted away from like making excuses for the Soviet Union sending tanks into different countries or anything like that, right? Like they were Euro-communists, which means that they'd like disassociated themselves from the Soviet Union, to a very great extent, and said like, that's not really what we want. We have this like alternative, more democratic idea of communism, because I'm sure if they hadn't said that, like nobody's going to be like voting for them in French elections in the 1980s.
Someone in the comments accurately identified the German soccer player as Paul
Yes.
Breitner, and yes, he did have an amazing afro. That's some good knowledge.
That? Yeah, I just highlighted that person. Thank you. Who was that?
That is some good knowledge.
Yeah, sorry, I need
So
to.
he was a German player, Nando?
He was a German soccer player, one of the best of all time.
That's the era of the RAF. He's responding to like the Baader Meinhof game. Like he's definitely like, this was a big thing in West Germany in the 70s.
Cool. Sounds cool. Yeah.
Also, Sam Madison, Trotsky wrote a bit about the problems of America's two-party system in letters well into his exile, though. That's still quite relevant.
Totally. I totally agree. Yeah.
Thank you for that intervention, Sam.
Yeah, no.
I just want to say the word intervention. I like it when people call it that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, my intervention would be that Trotsky's right about the disease, but also that because like so many American socialists, basically if you were a socialist before like, about 2015, like there's like a very good chance in many cases that you came out of that kind of tradition. And again, that's not all bad, right? I mean, I think they got some stuff right, but like also the bad thing about it, especially when it comes to party politics, is that they're reading this Russian guy who is maybe reacting beyond Russia mostly to like events going on in like socialist and communist parties in, Western Europe maybe. And they're getting his analysis and they're applying it to the context of the American party system, which is just completely different, right? Like we don't have, like America doesn't have political parties in the sense that European countries or Latin American countries for that matter have political parties.
People here don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
It's so different. I mean, and going back to what you guys were saying about like the social conditions here, I think that the best person that we can learn from actually is right here in America. No need to go to some foreign pointy-headed dude like Bernie Sanders, man. The most successful left politician activist in decades. So bread and butter issues, Medicare for all. The rich people are bad. The poor people are good. They're suffering, and hyper focus on that message and ignore most everything else.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're like going back to the Trotskyist thing, right? Like probably the most successful example of a socialist politician who comes out of the Trotskyist tradition in the United States is Kshama Sawant, who's great, but also played a really good role in getting Seattle the $15 minimum wage, but also the high watermark of that movement in terms of electoral politics in our lifetime is winning one city council seat in Seattle. Whereas like Bernie Sanders, 6 months ago, the entire political discussion was about, okay, if he shows up with a plurality, but not a majority of the delegates, should we still let him get the nomination? Like that's what everybody thought was going to happen. And, and he came, even in, he won, did that hat trick of, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada.
Another soccer reference.
Previous time.
Reference, but yeah, kind of.
Yeah, hockey reference in my case, but yeah.
No, okay.
And he won 22 states, right, in 2016. And he completely altered the political landscape in America so that there are people who aren't like marginal history buffs, who think of themselves as socialists and, at least, like things like, what the Democratic Party thinks about Medicare for all are actually huge political issues. So yeah, I would amen Nando on that. I think that like if there's somebody we should be looking to for like what does an effective socialist strategy look like for America in 2020, it would be that elderly Jewish guy, not Leon Trotsky.
And that's really interesting.
That older Jew, is that what you said? You cut out.
Yeah. Like your choice of elderly Jewish socialists to get
choose your favorite Jew.
Yeah. Choose your Jewish fighter. Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting because I think if we were like to look at what we're saying now in 6 months, we're all essentially responding to the failure of Bernie to win, right? And the appointment of Kamala, which is just like Nando said, like fuck you left, whatever. So the question
you get
is
nothing.
Yeah, you get nothing. The Godfather. My offer is nothing. So the really
like really like grinding our face into the pavement.
You know what's interesting is like I think that Rice is a much worse person.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they do. They threaten you with the
but I actually don't even think. I think that like it was a bigger because most people, fewer people know who she is. Like fewer Bernie just because of age. Like this was actually a bigger fuck you.
For sure.
Than Rice would have been, although probably we'd be like in more wars if Rice were our Veep and then president. I obviously liked Karen Bass, who got
the Miami Cubans railroaded her, man.
I mean, wow. I hate Chuck Todd. I already talked about this. The hammer and sickle comment that he made. I'll never forgive him for that. And then he does it with Karen Bass, and I hate Chuck Todd. And he's so full of it. And all these guys pretend that they're just calling strikes and balls, but they're actually not. They're totally creating narratives as if that matters, as if like Susan Rice's bloodied hands from Libya and Iraq weren't a liability, but Bass going to Cuba when she was 19 was. I just can't stand it. Anyway, she was never going to get his presidential nomination anyway. But I don't care.
It's like the culmination of a series of fuck yous, right? Because we also had like the DNC platform committee voting like 125 to 36 against Medicare for all. Incredible. In the context of a party platform.
That's aspirational. That's aspirational.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a meaningless like wish list anyway, right? Like it's something to like make party act.
They wouldn't even let us have Keith Ellison run the DNC.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, this is true. Rice probably will be Secretary of State. No worries, guys. I mean, then this makes me like, I'm not gonna lie. Part of me, my vindictive. I wish I had Eugene's like view, which really is that it doesn't matter, or that participating in the system is really is the wrong focus or is a distraction. My thing is just I fucking hate them so much. I almost want to not vote. Like I wish I could say that I had a real analytical framework or political, but I mean I do kind of, some part of me does think what is the end game? We're just like shifting further and further right. But luckily I'm not in a swing state.
So then like what do you guys think we should do? I mean like the question is strategy, right? Like all the guys we're talking about are ultimately strategists. And that's why we're talking about Lenin and Mao and Trotsky and Stalin, because they actually won. So this is
retreat to the mountains. Arm yourself.
No, that's the thing. Bernie was always like, look, we're not talking about like what we're talking about isn't like, you know, we're on political avant-garde, like out in the mountains. Like this is, you know, massively popular, mass support, which is true. But I don't know. I mean, I like Bernie Sanders probably more than most people in the entire world, including his family. But I'm a little bit like, I don't know it definitely taught people that things that we could be outraged. I think that's important. That won't go anywhere. It definitely made things more, you know, shifted the Overton window and made things that we were told were radical mainstream. So now we just have to actually, you know what? I just made myself feel better. You change the ideas and then you catch up on the strategy and then you kill all the people who are in the way. Not literally, maybe. But yeah, you get rid. Then you drag those people, figuratively, massacre them, grind them into stone. But
this is what Nico always talked about. I think was the need to build institutions. Right. This was one of his big. I think that would be like my inclination, which is to like organize like unions and things like that, but also build the institutions that'll be ready to do things like staff the administrative state at both the local and federal levels. And I think that's what like the Goldwater campaign did. And I think that would probably be where I'd look most, is like the 64 destruction of Goldwater and the Republican in the election basically sowed the seeds of the Reagan victory, and the dominance of conservatism. So I think, and those guys were learning from Marxists. If you read them, they were looking at like, they were fucking reading Lenin, because they're like, this guy won. And so now we need to look at the conservatives who won in the 60s.
Oh my God, are we gonna have to look, are we gonna have to read Biden because this guy won?
Yeah.
No, Biden's
I mean, that means we get to read Neil Kinnock, right? If we read Biden?
But well, yeah, that's right. We will be reading Neil Kinnock by reading Biden, but of course, Biden's like amazing stroke of strategic genius was
not
to
dying,
was
not stroking in the middle of the election.
Was to not die for just long enough that Obama could make some calls and like get the other centrists to drop out. Like I don't know that that's really a strategy that's available to us. Never mind his general election strategy, you know, of having there be a plague and a depression at the same time so that anybody could win.
But what Daniel was saying about the preparing yourself to staff, you know, administrative posts and all that stuff. I mean, I remember talking to Matt Brunig a few years ago before he launched the People's Policy Project, and one of the reasons why he launched that policy project is because sometimes there are even like some congressmen that might be willing to support Medicare for all or introduce a bill like Medicare for all, but they literally don't have the staffing apparatus to write a bill. You know what I mean? And these things, most bills like get outsourced to, you know, the Center for American Progress or the Brookings Institution or some think tank that's like really well funded. And, you know, that's why he's like, I'm just going to start this think tank and literally write policy for anyone who wants it. You know, like they can come to him. And that just like that alone is a huge step forward from the institution building standpoint. I mean, obviously we need much more. The thing that I always reckon with is like, and I go back and forth on this all the time, is media, right? It seems clear that the media played a huge role in this primary, like a huge role. I mean, you look at the coverage that Biden got in the wake of the everyone dropping out, and so the question is like, do you build alternative media or do you infiltrate kind of the established media? And it's probably a bit of both, but you know, that's the one I always think about, just because I am in the media. So that's the one I think about.
And I think what's changing now, and you guys could tell me, but it does seem like the idea, which was popular when we were kids, that the journalist is sort of non-ideological chronicler, which to me is so reflective of the end of history moments. Like history's over, so we're just like calling balls and strikes. I think that is changing amongst younger journalists. I mean, you see it in the podcast world, but like, all of us are very ideological. And I think that's a very important thing that Bernie did also, Aiden.
Yeah.
He brought back ideology in a serious, meaningful way. And that's a really important.
And he made ideology more important than, well, he did two things. One is he made it, he validated it, but he also debunked the myth that claims that things are not ideological. They're just, you know, they're just descriptive, but no, they're not. They're very normative. And we know that. And all these things that we were always told were impossible or just not doable or nice ideas and pie in the sky actually are. So I kind of think that what Sanders did is like the institutions come next, but he kind of created all right, fine. It was Occupy Wall Street too. It was not just Sanders, blah, 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 whatever. But it was, and that's true. There was a movement. But look, I don't know why we have to be kind of like naive about this or have some narratives that makes us feel good about ourselves. Like leaders obviously have an important role, historically speaking. And he's a great framer, storyteller, communicator. And it's kind of unbelievable sometimes when I step back and I'm like, because I'm a New York Jew, so he's not that foreign to me, obviously. But like, he resonated with people all over this fucking country. And he's niche in some ways, but he's also so universal in other ways.
I mean, tons of people voted for him in, you know, rural Michigan in 2015.
Yeah, of course. That's my point. Yeah.
It would be interesting to examine how like Jewish comedy paved the way for Bernie Sanders.
Well, you know what? I was thinking of that because I was like, well, it's kind of like Jewish and Black comedy also.
It is.
Like, you know, it's what?
Legible. He's legible.
Yeah,
right?
legible. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They've seen a Bernie before in their lives. Maybe not as the president, but they've seen.
But they saw Larry David, so they've got the
Larry
idea.
David, exactly. Yeah.
Seinfeld, Jackie Mason.
And I'm sorry, but Larry David is a Shonda because he donated to Mayor Pete, even though his own flesh and blood is Sanders. And I don't, you know what, Larry David, I'm sorry, Sanders is not a schmata salesman. That's a different genre of Jew. Like I didn't appreciate that. But anyway.
Yeah,
Latinos, Arabs, Arab Americans, Muslims,
I mean, the Latino stuff in LA was crazy with Bernie. I mean, it was just remarkable. I canvassed a little bit in Spanish and talked to like some 65-year-old women who came from Mexico and were like, oh, sí. mi sobrina me contó de ese hombre es muy bueno, ese hombre nos va a ayudar, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, no, I spent the day before the Nevada caucus canvassing cab drivers, you know, on the Vegas Strip, and who pretty much like fell into like the categories of, sorry, I can't vote, I don't have my citizenship, or I'm not really aware that the caucus is going on, or I support Bernie Sanders. Those were like the three options. So yeah, I mean, it clearly reached a lot of people, and actually, I think even on the media point, you know.
No, pues yo soy un taxista de Las Vegas y me gusta Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, right.
No mames,
Did
cabrón.
not meet that person for whatever that's worth anecdotally.
Ese cuate es un putas, you know. No, never happened.
Yeah,
it did not, right? And I think actually even like, you know, the contempt, right, for the media that he had. I mean, I think in 2020, right? I mean, that played well. That was good for him, you know. Like it's like that thing where when he was doing his interview with the New York Times editorial board, and like he came very like he was just so openly contemptuous, you know. He was like, look, I know how you people are. You like it when, you know, when I call you and tell you happy birthday. Oh, thank you, Bernie, you know, but like, I don't do bullshit like that.
Right.
Like,
I actually have to say, I think that he should have been, there are two things that I'm mad at Bernie for. One is that he liked Biden as much as he did. He just had a soft spot for him. And that last debate, it was just like, it was like, it's like watching someone trying to prep their friend for a bigger debate, for like a more adversarial debate. Cause he was like, come on, Joe, come on. Like, I know you, Joe, like that's not what happened. Come on, admit it. Like he wanted him to actually like be more kind of like versatile, more agile in his responses. And just Joe couldn't, because to be fair, he has a long history of not getting called out for any of his pathological lying. So why fix it if it ain't broken, I guess. And the other thing is that I do think, as much as I hate the media for their attacks on Bernie, and I'm more protective of him probably than most people are, and I'm more obsessed with that, and, you know, spend a lot of time looking at Sydney Ember pieces, so you guys out there didn't have to. I do think he should have probably played nice with some more figures in the media, not all of whom would have been reachable, and also with some, like, I think he needed to court people and court more endorsements.
Probably.
As much as as hard it is for me to ever say
maybe
anything.
He should have told the reporters happy birthday after all.
Well, no, but I mean, there's some people who, well, anyway, this is a different discussion slightly, but I don't think he was going to win over Chuck Todd or Mimi Rocha, Rocha, whatever. And you know, there's also another story. I feel like we have to talk about this a little bit, because we're talking about strategy and real politics. Did you guys see the story about Alex Morse?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So did you see there's been an update? This is really shifting gears. We don't have to go there, but I'm going to have to do this in some way. We got the message. We got the receipts, guys. We got the chats.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Right? All right. Anyone have any final comments about this, though?
Well, I guess I will just say, Daniel and Ben, do you self-ID as Marxists?
Yeah.
I do, yeah. For sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that
we're cool, right?
I guess. Oh, okay. All right. Everybody's sort of. Yeah. No. Look. I mean, I think. I guess I would also say, you know, just to like maybe put a little bit of bow on what was said earlier, that like, because the thing that's most valuable about Marx's analysis is getting people to think about economic structures rather than like the moral character of individuals or what ideas are in their heads even, right? You know, that and that's like maybe the part of Marxism that's like most badly needed right now, right? You know, that like we shouldn't, you know, just to pick an obvious example, you know, that we shouldn't that like if we're hyper focused on how much racial bias is in any individual's head, you know, we're going to miss the boat on the racial distribution of poverty, right? You know, like which is the more fundamental issue.
I'm talking about the docs. Have you guys seen this? The docs of racial oppression, and we're all up here, and we need to get to the below the surface. Okay, that's my Robin DiAngelo. Sorry,
I like it. It's the good Robin DiAngelo.
Yeah, that's her least offensive. Yeah. Also, my favorite part is when she tells people, imagine if we thought about Jackie Robinson not as being so good, but as the first person who was allowed to play on major leagues. They teach us that it's just that he was so good. No, I don't know anything about sports, and I know that's not true.
Here's my woke Brian Williams take on that. We've got breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. 3 staffers have anonymously accused Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, of being a class reductionist. This is very charged allegations. We're looking into them. So far, we have no documentation, but you have to believe women. You have to believe the staffers. Bernie Sanders may or may not be a class reductionist, but these accusations are real, and we are hearing them.
And we are here for it, and I'm here for them.
Yeah, right. So like, if the best thing about, like the most vital thing about Marx's analysis is that we should all be, a bit more class reductionist, not in the caricatured sense that people have in mind when they say that, but like that we should understand that like a lot of other social dynamics do reduce to underlying class, conditions, then it's a weird package to have that position and then also say that, okay, we shouldn't be worried about whether people are too defensive in corporate diversity trainings. We should be worried about like the distribution of wealth and power. Great. And also, how fucking dare you talk bad about my boy Karl Marx? The most important issue in the world is like whether or not you like have the correct moral evaluation of Marx as an individual. There's an awkward fit between those two things.
Yeah, and just one thing, I think it's also important to appreciate the complexities of the Marxist tradition, and I would emphasize for people in 2020 America to read people like Eduard Bernstein and Karl Kautsky and Rosa Luxemburg and Rudolf Hilferding, because they were members of a political constellation that was in a democracy that actually tried to govern. And so I think the German tradition that was very much responding to Marx, basically making Marx political, as in existing in an actually existing polity, is a really important tradition to familiarize oneself with. And it's because of that tradition, Nando, to answer your question, that I call myself a Marxist. I think it's a very astute tradition that has a lot to say to the context of America in 2020.
Cool.
All right.
Sweet.
Awesome.
We're cool. We're all cool.
Yeah.
All right.
We're cool dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, now that's been established. How about Alex?
Well, Katie, what about you? You have been quiet on the question.
I mean, I was
cool.
I'm not cool. I mean, I'm my uncle, I think I've told this story before. He was like, my grandmother once was talking to me and my mom, and she was like, your uncle was so, this was probably in like, in the 90s. No, this is probably in like 2099 or 2000 or something. And my grandmother was like, your uncle was so upset when he found out about Stalin. He had to leave the party. And my mom was like, yeah, like 2 years ago. And my uncle's big concern, he once was like, Stalin, of course, was a lot closer to Lenin than Trotsky, but still they didn't need to assassinate him. That wasn't necessary. So that's my family background. But yeah, I mean, I'm a Marxist. I mean, having a somewhat Marxist view of history, you could be like a reactionary, you could be a conservative. Most people don't really wear that label, but yeah, I am. And I also Spanish Civil War, that's on both sides of my family. Once I said that, on both sides, and people were like, you family in both sides? Like what Jews fought on both sides? I'm sure you can find one, but yeah, same side as the
my family only fought on one side.
Oh, I thought you were mixed.
No.
Which side? Oh, the bad side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that.
Definitely Franco.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I thought for some reason.
And one of them volunteered for the blue division, La División Azul, which went to the Eastern Front to fight with the Nazis.
Voluntarily.
Yeah, volunteered, man. Fucking
yeah. None of that.
Said it was so cold you couldn't pee outside because pee keeps your body warm, and it was like so freaking cold that when you get a chill when you pee, you know what I mean? It's because like it's like warmth leaving your body, and it has to like, it takes a second to readjust. Like it was so cold that in that split second you could like freeze to death or get hypothermia or some shit. So they tried not to pee outside.
Wow. Well, it's true.
I remember I was like a kid. He was like telling me that, and I was like,
"You were a little kid," you said.
Yeah.
Were you like, "Pero por qué eres un Nazi? ¿Por qué eres un Nazi?"
Pero fuiste con los nazis?
So it was like the scene in Pulp Fiction, like hearing about the watch, hearing about this guy at the at the Eastern Front not being able to piss.
Exactly.
It's true that Yiddish was the most common, I think, spoken language among the international brigades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait,
did you see what happened? Wait, speaking of that, did you see what happened with David Simon this week?
No, what happened?
Super funny.
So David
Simon is developing a show about the Spanish Civil War, focused on the international brigades. And Pablo Iglesias, who's the leader of Podemos, the left party in Spain, tweeted at tagged David Simon in tweet praising the plot against America, and about like how creeping fascism like comes, it's not like one of those things where it's like there's a takeover. It kind of sometimes like can happen gradually. Anyway, and that like unleashed like a war in David Simon's mentions between like people who hate Podemos and like people arguing about the Spanish Civil War and all this shit and Franco and all that. And so like David Simon like responded, and he's like, I can't understand like who, and he had no idea who Pablo Iglesias was, and he was just like, he responded, and it like unleashed like a further thing. And so this one guy tweeted at him, "Ole tus cojones," which means like ole, like your balls, which means like kind of like you're being brave right now. And David Simon interpreted it at, like in the opposite, like he was like saying that you don't have any balls. And so David Simon like went off on him and like was all over the Spanish press. It was just the funniest little Twitter controversy I could ever think of.
What is his ideology? He's
a lib,
resistance lib, right?
Total resistance lib.
Yeah, but he's a teeny bit better than a resistance lib, I feel like.
Yes, because he believes in labor big time. He's like a big organized labor guy. But like it's one of those things where as he gets older, he gets worse. He just gets worse and worse. And that Plot Against America show, I mean, Pablo Iglesias liked it because he's not in America and doesn't like follow the discourse here. But like that was like just nauseating lib shit. It was like nauseating. It was like the main character was basically like a Rachel Maddow addict. At the time. Anyway.
1933, Anchorage, Alaska. Freddie Simon comes into his home and finds 3 boxes of unread mail. That's my impersonation.
That's a Rachel Maddow. Yeah.
I got to get more specific though. So who wants to look at this new Morse story? I understand if people have to go because this is we're moving on to new territory.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
We got to talk about this. Also, I don't like Avakian. He's what, a Maoist? RCP? What is that?
He's the head of the Communist Party.
Well, the RCP, right?
It's the Revolutionary Communist Party, which is basically like the it's a Maoist thing, but it's also like very much like the cult of Bob Avakian.
Yeah,
so it's like funny.
He also endorsed Biden, which is hilarious.
Bob Avakian endorsed Biden?
Yes.
Who did? Yeah.
When?
Like 3 days ago or something, or a week ago or something, like now. And yeah, it's just, I love the idea of like Maoists for Biden. Like that would actually be a funny like bit, Is
he okay? Like, I think that, wow. All right.
Maoists for Biden.
Self-criticism sessions.
So, I also just love that his name is Bob, that he's Chairman Bob.
I know. Awesome. He's Armenian? Not that that's either here. That's neither here nor there. Is that what he is, though?
I guess.
I sound like a eugenicist. I keep saying that every show. That's never a good sign. Okay. So
back to the racial classifications.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just save so much time. All right. So let's look at this Morse thing because, oh, man, I could have really used this article earlier today. I'm not going to say anything else about it, but I'll just say.
He got in trouble for like getting his dick wet, right?
No, not at all. I mean, that was the allegation. Yeah, but
just allegedly getting his dick wet. That's even worse.
No, not even getting his dick wet. You'll see. It's so innocent. Okay, first of all, look at this guy. All right, you can't judge a book by. Oh, hold on. Oh my God, wait, you didn't know this was a total hit job. And I don't like to say that unless it's true, and I don't want to sound like an apologist. And I by the way, I still think Shahid is, we'll get into this later, another episode, but you'll see. I don't think the Shahid thing is what it appears to be, but I was totally ready to say I no longer support him. And we'll get into that in another episode. But this is just very straightforward. Okay, so I'll just share the start reading this. Ready? So here at The Intercept, college Democrat chats reveal year-old plan to engineer and leak Alex Morse accusations. This will sink his campaign, predicted a college Democrat leader hoping to work for Rep. Richard Neal.
Wait, can we pause for a second?
Yeah.
Speaking of fucking nerd shit, what kind of like soulless, annoying 19-year-old joins the fucking college Democrats? Go fuck yourself. I'm like, maybe I can work for Richard Neal someday.
He's like one of the worst.
Christ, that is like bleak as fuck. I
mean, he's an incredibly
How is that not a bigger part of this story? Like, who are these fucking nerds that are joining the college Democrats?
They're terrible nerds. So, all right. All right. By the way, that is worth like really like thinking about who would do that, right?
Yeah,
like
a real psychopath.
Well, no, I mean, it's not that. I don't think. Wait, you're. What is your question? Who would join the college Dems?
Like not even just join the college Dems, but like be this person who's like super duper into college Dems to the point that like they're like an undergraduate student and they have like detailed fantasies about which centrist hack they want to work for later.
Yeah. I mean, Bessner, you're a college professor. How are the kids these days like joining the college Dems and being like, maybe I'll become a staffer in Nancy Pelosi's office someday?
I don't have much. I don't have much interaction with the college Dems, but it's interesting to me. What's interesting about
they don't invite you to speak at their annual.
Not conference. Anymore. They don't invite Alex Morse anymore, and we'll get into that in a second.
So, but it's just interesting to So what seems to be is that the student wants to like use this in the game of like political manipulation, realpolitik, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting. Like that's the culture of professional politics, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's that. I just think he's a bit ahead of his time. That's it. Yeah. Like he's a bit of a precocious hack.
He seems like a student.
Yeah, exactly. This is. If I were Neal, I would want to hire him. If I were like the most soulless, corporate centrist, powerful Dem. So, okay, here we go. Ready? So, the leadership of the UMass Amherst College Democrats began discussing an operation they believe could sink the campaign of Alex Morse for Congress as far back as last October, a plan they then helped engineer and which came to fruition on Friday after the college Dems sent a letter regarding Morse to the Daily Collegian, the school's student newspaper. The letter, sent 3 weeks before his primary challenge to Rep. Richard Neal, informed Morse that he was no longer welcome at college Democratic events, alleging he used such opportunities to socialize with students and later connect with them on social media in ways that made them feel uncomfortable. Message logs obtained by The Intercept, both from leaders of the College Democrats UMass Amherst chapter group, as well as chats one of them had with Morse, shed new light on how this purported scandal was deployed. As a condition of obtaining the logs, The Intercept agreed to publish some of the chats and paraphrase others.
Wow. So there's a leak within the ship.
There was what? A leak in the ship? Yeah. I mean, the letter, by the way, that they wrote was so full of like, who did a great piece on this? My co-host, Matt Taibbi. He did a piece on this at his Substack called The New Puritans or something. And one of the best lines was he was like, it turns out that college students, much like children or St. Bernards, cannot actually give consent or something. It was pretty funny.
People need to get laid so much more. Like, honestly, that's like an old, like, kind of Beavis and Butthead thing to say, but it's like so 1000% true.
Well, yeah, I love, by the way, Matt Taibbi's line that one of the last few Substack things before then, where he was like making fun of like some article about like architecture being phallic or something.
Yeah, I saw that one.
It seems like these people make the junior anti
masculinity skyscrapers. Masculinity.
These people make the Junior Anti-Sex League from 1984 look like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
That's great. I
mean, on the left, I think in general we don't know how to talk about pleasure particularly well.
Right.
I do.
And so,
Join my OnlyFans.
That's true. Right. But I think this relates to like the complexities of pleasure, which would be like, we need more thinking about that for the 21st century world.
Well, it's interesting because this is where like there's a kind of butting of heads, no pun intended, between like woke survivor culture and woke sex positivity and queer culture. And in this case, they like
sex workers, but like no one has sex.
Yeah, or like we believe survivors and sexual violence is important, and also we're gonna compare a gay single guy in his 30s dating online to sexual violence.
Yeah, there's like that's flattened. There's no way talking about this stuff.
Yeah, and so you wind up throwing one of those two groups. Not that they're distinct, but they can be overlapping. But at least one of those groups is going to be thrown under the bus by that kind of framing.
Yes.
So okay.
Yeah. So I love that in the quote that you just read, right? You know, it's like, man, this, as you say, it's right. Not even a sex scandal. It's a sliding into DM scandal.
Yeah. So let's see.
This was like the Anthony Weiner thing. He didn't even get his dick wet, you know?
No, but Anthony Weiner is very sexual, and that's fine. I was a big defender of Weiner.
But he really wasn't. It was just like he got off on like.
No.
Hey, he's my former congressman.
He sent a dick pic. I think it was an underwear. It was a underwear covered dick pic.
He sent it to a 15-year-old, I believe.
Here he didn't until later, and that's when it got inappropriate. I was all pro Wiener before, but then he actually did do something. As long as it was consensual, I didn't care. I actually started a Facebook group called We Want Wiener and Free Wiener or something. It was so stupid, but I got on MSNBC that way because that was when Cenk Uygur had a show on. Anyway, So okay. Here's the thing. Ready? So, okay. The letter sent 3 weeks before his primary challenge to Rep. Neal informed Morse that he was no longer welcome at college Democratic events, alleging he used such opportunities to socialize with students and later connect with them on social medias in ways that made them feel uncomfortable. Okay, I read that already. Okay. On Wednesday, following a statement by Morse, the statewide College Democrats chapter clarified that he had in fact only attended a single event during the course of his campaign. It was after that event in October 2019 that the leadership of the UMass Amherst chapter began to talk about leaking a story damaging to Morse, according to those online communications. Timothy Enos, chief strategist for the UMass Amherst College Democrats, admitted in the chats that he was a Neal stan. And he said he felt conflicted about involving.
Who the fuck is this person? Like, who the fuck is this person?
And he said he felt conflicted about involving the chapter of the college Dems in a future attack on Morse. But I need a job, concluded Enos. Neal will give me an internship. At the time, Enos was president of the chapter, a post he held from April 2019 to April 2020 when he was term limited out. Leaders of the college Dems went beyond merely plans to leak. They also explicitly discussed how they could find Morse's dating profiles and then lead him into saying something incriminating that would then damage his campaign.
What's the motivation? I'm unclear why.
They want, because he's challenging Neal,
a
very powerful, corrupt Ways and Means guy, and Holyoke, who represents this area.
Are really into Neal.
Yeah, they have no choice but to stand Neal.
Well, this one guy, This is really amazing. The effort appears to have failed to generate the material they hoped for, but the group's leaders did believe they held damning evidence they contemplated leaking. Instagram messages between Morse and Andrew Abramson, who in April became president of the organization. Ultimately, the college Dems did not release any chats, which was always suspicious, by the way, or any other specific claims against Morse, opting instead to level broader charges that he behaved inappropriately. Morse, who was an adjunct professor at UMass Amherst until the fall of 2019, has acknowledged having consensual relationships with students, but has said that he has never had an inappropriate relationship with a student of his, and no such allegations have been made.
This is also related to the precaritization of academic labor.
Yeah.
He's an adjunct and he doesn't have protections.
Yeah, and also, I'm sorry, being an adjunct when you're in your 20s and you're an adjunct, and you're gay and you're living in a college town, and this is the worst part of it. Give me a fucking break. We're talking about one college, maybe 5 college consortium. What are you supposed to do? Like, everyone's off limits. It would be one thing if it was just Amherst, but you're throwing in Hampshire, Amherst, what else? I guess
5 colleges, right?
Yeah, the 5 colleges.
Yeah.
5 colleges.
That's such a weird, like, I mean, like, in general, the way that people talk about power imbalances where power can mean like anything or nothing. Power can mean status, power can mean age, power can mean like lots of people thinking you're cool, right? Like anything. When like people start being moralistic about sex on the left Twitter, like anything can count as power. And the idea that like any power differentials, even getting down to things as petty as your
Ben Burgis, you can only have sex with your literal twin.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, because there's no power.
Yeah.
You know, well, twins are the same sex, yeah, but
well,
like,
they could be
no one ever talks about beauty as power, or which is also another.
I know, I hate it. It's horrible.
Yeah, but it's like, but you know, but having the exalted status of an adjunct professor, you know, like, and all the, you know, all the gravitas that goes with that, right? Like, clearly, anybody out of these thousands of people in all of these colleges, you know, who will never be in your class, like, oh, nope, too much of a power imbalance. You know?
No, I just love that. I just saw that the DNC released their speaking list for the fucking DNC, and like Bill Clinton is the headliner on one of the nights, and like Bill Clinton was like raping children on the Lolita Express and Little St. James Island with Jeffrey Epstein, and like that's fine. And also, like, you know, if you want to talk about power imbalances, like when you're the president of the United States, sleeping with a 22-year-old unpaid intern. But like that's fine.
That seems like possibly a bigger power imbalance than like you're an adjunct who teaches one class.
Yeah,
and somebody's a student at some campus.
You live in a college town.
And also, this is like Weber, man. This is a Protestant country with still Protestant norms around sexuality. I mean, some of the best social theory is all about this stuff. And so I think there's a tendency to flatten everything across the political spectrum. And I think that's to decontextualize, which is, you know, against, again, the science of historical materialism.
That's what he said. Okay.
That's the name of your new album.
So on October 5th, Morse attended a College Democrats event at a local community college. Neil also appeared. Remember, Neil's the bad guy who's in power. Neil also appeared and was introduced by Enos, who was at the time enrolled in a journalism class Neil taught at UMass Amherst. Neil later told Enos he was impressed by the event. Enos claimed in the chats. Morse sat on a panel with Abramson.
I know this. I know I'm 13 about this, but I can't not laugh every time you say that name.
It's definitely Ennis, by the way.
All right, but it rhymes with Weenus, so I want to say Enos.
Like in Brokeback Mountain.
This is the Weenus, by the way.
Nice
ref.
You know that? Hip ref.
Yeah, it's for the kids.
Did you know that, though, that this is the weenus, the inside of the elbow?
Yes.
All right, everyone knew that? All right, fine.
Wait, no, isn't it the skin at the other side? Isn't it this?
It's this side of the elbow. It's not the outside of the elbow.
It's not the
elbow. It's
no,
the
but the skin that like you can't feel at the end of your elbow. I think that's
thought
the
it was this.
I'm looking it up right now.
Let's look it up. Yeah.
3 Pinocchios.
Yeah. Okay, hold on one second. Let me just hold on. All right. Okay. So.
How do you spell weenus?
I don't know. Just put an elbow on. All right.
Yeah. Okay. I found it.
All right.
I was right.
You were. What is it?
It's if you pinch the.
Don't ween-explain me. Don't ween-explain me.
If you pinch the outside of your elbow, like right here, and that kind of dead skin that has no nerves, that's the weenus.
Yeah. Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a huge weenus.
Yeah, but what's the point? Because it has no feeling. So
true.
All right. All right. So, okay. On October 5th, Morse attended a college. Okay. Morse also sat on a panel with Abramson. After the event, Morse reached out to Abramson on Instagram to say it was a pleasure meeting. The two had previously matched on Tinder, Ennis said in the chats, but had never met up. To match on Tinder means both parties must swipe in the same direction in order to begin a conversation. Okay, so now we have the receipts. So obviously, whoever, I guess is this Enos? Someone took a screenshot of it and said, not overt, but it's very clear he's not. Oh no, was this Enos or the student? Hold on, let's see who it was. All right, Neil.
It's Ennis.
Ennis, sorry. Oh, it was Ennis. It was Ennis. No, it was Abramson, right? Yeah, so Abramson. All right, so this must be a screenshot from Abramson writing. Not overt, but it's very clear he's not talking to me for no reason. Thank you. Good to see you too, smiley face. How's the rest of your weekend? response. Pretty good. I went home last night to surprise my mom for her birthday. HBU. Oh, that's nice. How was that? I had an event to go to last night to speak. Then
like
had a wine tasting party
most boring shit I've ever
at a
read.
friend's house. Now I'm in North Adams about to march in the parade.
Like read the message. Read that shit.
Like, okay, so then the commentary on it from Abramson is like, read that message. Also, don't mind me totally leading him on. All right, you do not know how to lead someone on, and you don't know how to read a message because there's nothing to see there.
That's really strange.
It's so bizarre.
It's just strange. Yeah.
He added that he accepted the message request because why not? Okay, this will sink his campaign, Ennis said, calling it part of a pattern of Morse dating students. That conversation with Abramson appears to be connected to the charge that underlies the College Dems statement against Morse when they said that Morse sought out students that he met at our events privately on social media in a manner widely understood by our generation to indicate intimacy. Okay, so let's just...
I used to think that we're going to have a president that has like a dick pic out there, and like we're gonna see it, like and it's gonna be the president's dick, just because like like generational. But I'm starting to think that we're gonna go straight from like Kamala Harris president to like a eunuch president. Like that. In order to have a political career in the next 30 years, you just have to like when you're 19, chop off your balls and weenus, and then embark on a political career and just not.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't say, "Oh, that's nice. I went to a wine tasting." Like,
that's violence. That's violence.
Yeah, this is really strange.
Okay. All right. So. Okay. So then the conversation continued for a few weeks. After Ennis concluded the chats with Abramson would sink Morse's campaign, the conversation between Morse and Abramson continued for another several weeks. During that same period, Ennis was a student in Neil's The Politician and the Journalist class at UMass Amherst, and had been open with other members of the College Dems about hoping to land a job with Neil. The Intercept reported Tuesday. Ennis in the chats quipped that perhaps he should leak the information by including it in a paper for Neil's class. Oh my God, what a loser, actually. Okay.
A lot of reports.
Right. This is just weird. This is just fucking weird. Like I can barely like stand to, read this shit anymore. What the fuck? This is just like, this is so depressing.
So, okay, here's what we know. Okay. So, Enos told him he is known for dating students and had recently matched on a dating app Tinder with a fellow college dem and chatted with him via Instagram. In a statement to Mass Live on Monday, Neil spokesperson Kate Norton denied any collaboration between the Neil campaign and the student group, adding that the Neil campaign commends these courageous students. For what? Commends them for what? For lying? For pretending he was a predator when he went to one meeting?
Like, also, even assuming like everything is like, the courageous thing they did was rat someone out for saying, "Oh, that's nice. How's your weekend going? I'm going to a wine tasting." Like that. Yeah, that takes a lot of courage.
That's so brave.
What do you think that reflects? Like just this careerism, or is that an actual sexual morality there?
Oh no, I assume careerism. Maybe he was homeschooled or something, or raised in some kind of religious, Christian thing.
Yeah, so this is just purely weaponized.
I think so. But what's sad about this is that there are people. What's really frustrating about this is when there's a meeting of minds between weaponizing cynical careerists and somewhat good-natured, hearts kind of in the right place, woke people who just get really sloppy and bandwagonish.
Right.
And this is what happens, which is that people then start rescinding support, condemning, all that stuff. So, all right, where are we?
Well, this shows like the weapons that they're using against the left are getting more and more. Like it's the fact that this was effective in railroading his campaign. This is like.
Well, it's still going on. He hasn't dropped out yet. And
I know, but you know what I mean.
No, that it had any effect, right? What's also interesting is that in the chats, Ennis also floated the possibility of leaking allegations against more to Politico. And indeed, in June, the College Dems did so, pitching the story to Alex Thompson, a political reporter at the outlet. What a fucking bitch, right? Thompson reached out to the Morse campaign as part of his reporting, though ultimately did not run the story until months later after the college paper ran it. dude, why did you do that? If it wasn't a good story, you should have said that. All right, me giving the story to Politico. Wow, Tim, you were like such a nerd. Okay, do you see that? Horny police, you, me giving the story to Politico. All right. After receiving the inquiry, Morse said he reached back out to Abramson, the only student Morse had communicated with after College Dems event during his campaign. Morse said he apologized if his outreach had made the chapter president feel uncomfortable, and Abramson blocked him. Oh my God, what a fucking coward. Really brave. Ennis said in the chats that he had learned from people who had graduated previously that Morse was on Tinder, sharing a screenshot of a profile from the year before. The profile is standard, dating at fair, and does not include Morse's title as mayor of the nearby town of Holyoke, a position he's had since he was 22, nor does it mention his time as an adjunct at UMass, which ended last fall. Okay, so I wonder if Ennis is gay or not, by the way, because he may just be some really like homophobic, super straight and narrow dude who thinks that any of the like anything remotely gay is kind of scandalous.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Who cares?
Anyway, so the letter, yeah. Anyway, so basically, we all know that it's there were no specific allegations, and Daniel Marins helped break the story too. So yeah, it was a setup.
Shocking. I don't know. You know,
I mean, it's not always that neat. It was pretty neat. Like it was pretty overt. So that's all we have. That's all we have. And all these people. Okay, like Jamal Bowman, I think you can now pause your support. You can pause your pause on the support for him, and Sunrise Movement and Mass that you cancel. You know, you stop supporting him. It's time to get back on the bandwagon with that. It's just like, yeah, it's very disturbing.
It does actually raise interesting questions, though. Is at what point does something become verifiable, right? I feel like it's not. That's usually not such an easy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They usually don't.
Ethical choice.
Yeah. But someone's actually, someone changed my mind on Twitter because they convinced me. This guy I was arguing with on Twitter about this said, you can turn cartwheels coming up with scenarios where the taboo is mitigated, but the reality is that most undergrads aren't in their 20s. They're in their early 20s, in their late 20s. They're in their. So this professor said to me, it's obvious to anyone in academia that this is not okay, that this is inappropriate. And I was like, okay, so a guy in his 20s dates someone in his 20s, it's not appropriate. He goes, you can turn cartwheels coming up with scenarios where the taboo is mitigated, but the reality is that most undergrads aren't in their late 20s. They're in their early 20s or even their teens with little sense of identity and maturity. And that's just gross with like the frowny green face.
So they are like children or St. Bernards.
Yeah. This guy would definitely say that. And it's obvious to anyone in academia. And then he goes, the more accurate analogy would be how a step parent isn't actually related to their son or daughter. So it isn't formally incest.
Wow.
However, the idea of someone occupying the parent role, having an intimate relationship with a child is still revolting and inappropriate. That's a really good analogy.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, it is going to be kind of satisfying to go through all these, look at all the people. One woman did get ahead of the curve. Jen Taub, I think her name is. She's a law professor. She kind of like shat on him, and then she said it looks like it was a smear campaign. And you know, it's interesting because there are a lot of different questions, and some people are kind of just saying like, you know, it's more important. The issues are more important, and that's kind of a separate argument. Like you can argue that like we have to prioritize is the Green New Deal and all that, but there are two things here. One is like that nothing actually happened. Like that's the first thing. Anyway, so
also to be clear, like I'm still thinking about the stepdad analogy. So the idea is like an adjunct professor. Yeah, it's an adjunct professor who's teaching one class.
Well, let me see.
Not only is he the stepdad of all the kids in that class, but he's also the stepdad of anybody who attends any of the campuses.
Yeah, Ben, that's right. They're thinking of an academy like Dead Poets Society or something.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not like the guy like, oh yeah, like
he's teaching at 3 colleges. You know, he's like doesn't appreciate the material conditions of academia whatsoever. Where you don't have that same sort of like mentor-mentee relationship.
And again, the idea is that like you are the mentor of everybody who goes to this 5 college system.
It doesn't reflect a modern university. And also, it's UMass Amherst. It's not the 5-college system, so it's a state school.
Oh yeah.
No, but he's not allowed to. No, but he's not allowed to. He's affiliated with the 5 colleges.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow I know that because I was thinking about how hard it would be to avoid all of those people.
So that's a little what they call pastoralist. Where like that's like the vibe of that college. I didn't go to one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Wesleyan, so yeah.
Also, like, I mean, actually, that's interesting though, because if you did teach at UMass Amherst, is he the stepdad to everybody who goes to any university in the UMass system?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Maybe.
I said, so if I'm a year older than a student and he's part of the 5-college consortium that I don't teach.
Didn't Macron bang his teacher?
Yeah, he's married to his teacher. Yeah,
he's married to his
high school teacher.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which probably says a lot about France versus the United States.
Yeah,
that that like we're worried about whether like an adjunct professor in his 20s said, "Hey, how was your weekend?" in a creepy way, and in France, like, she's his high school teacher, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's exonerated.
We don't talk about that enough. We should do a whole show on Macron's relationship with his teacher. That would be
the teacher-student relationship isn't 100% paternalistic, but it's close enough, especially when you're dealing with young college students who are going through the college experience, learning about themselves, their interests, etc. They shouldn't be taken advantage of. Oh my God. All right.
Weird infantilizing.
I know, totally infantilizing.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, well, I think we learned a lot. You guys have any final takeaways? We learned what a tanky is. I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't know what.
We learned what a tank is. We learned what trot was. We learned that it's unacceptable to say, "Oh, that's sweet. I'm going to a wine tasting."
Right.
At least if it's one of your several thousand stepchildren, who are on the other end of the DM.
Yeah. And if you say, I like the way the guy think that he nailed him by like getting him to say, "How are you? HBU. I went to my mom's birthday," and he was like, "Okay, yeah, I had another event." Like, what weird planet do these people come from where they think they have a smoking gun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Jeremy Corbyn being an anti-Semite. It's like at some point we have to like just realize what's going on, and just be like never like the people who indulge any of this shit, even for like a second. It's like,
well, it is. I mean, what's interesting, there are a couple of things that happen. One is like there's a lot of use of passive voice, right? Like there was like a putting together various accusations because the one person who it was an abuse of power in which the guy who he went out on a date with, who's not Abramson, I believe, but he did go on a date with someone else. He didn't know he was mayor. So you can't really combine that. You can't use that as an example of an abuse of power if they didn't know that. So they had to use like the fact that other people knew about it. It was just I thought it was very clear that it smelled like, it was very suspicious. So now I wonder if people are going to, the thing that's annoying is that people are going to probably be like, oh, well, we're glad we erred on the side of caution and we waited for the information to come out. But the truth is just that on the face of it, it looks suspicious and you should at least wait and see. There was literally no evidence of anything except for a kind of tortured, awkwardly worded letter.
Yeah, yeah. I like somebody in the chat says mayors can only date other mayors. So I guess that's the official position.
Yeah, there's a lot of class stuff in
there. You can only date the exact thing that you are.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're half Jewish, half whatever, you have to date someone who's exactly the same as you, same exact age, and has the same exact job somehow.
Yeah.
That's how you avoid any problems, folks.
Yeah. He's amazing, by the way, this guy. He came from a really poor family, Alex Morse. Parents were not college educated. Was an activist since he was really young, came out at like 16. He's like really great. Everyone should check out his campaign. I may or may not have spoken to him in some capacity. I'll just leave it at that.
And Tinder?
But
Tinder DMs?
Yeah. Yeah, I got a smoking gun. I asked him how his day was, and he said it was great. How are you? So, yeah, I feel violated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm older than him, actually. He should feel violated by me.
Well, there you go.
Power imbalance.
Yeah, big time, yeah.
Cool.
And yeah. So I guess this was fun.
Yeah, guys.
Yeah.
Smarty pants.
And tell everyone where.
Oh
wait, I want to leave you with one thing. Hold on. I do this. So this is going to be.
Marx was good. Mayors can only date other mayors.
Yeah. Don't worry. We'll have some like people further left, guys. Everyone can calm down. And I know that Stalinists don't call themselves Stalinists. Calm down, everyone. People got very defensive when I said we'd have some Stalinists on. Hold on. Share screen. Shuja, friend of the show, Shuja tweeted this. Okay, important news about Andrew Yang. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pakistani Americans fired up for change, mobilizing the community for Joe Biden, featuring
Andrew Yang.
Yeah, featuring 2 potentially Pakistani Americans, 2 non-Pakistani Americans, and but what's so perfect about it is that here's the real thing. I've got to be honest, I kind of expected to speak. That's Andrew Yang.
At the DNC.
Yeah, at the DNC, and then he gets to speak for the Pakistani Americans. Yeah. And Shuja tweets, "This is like a joke I would make up if I was slightly racist against Pakistanis." Anyway, well, thank you guys so much for joining. This is great. And where can people find everyone?
Twitter.
All right. I'll put links to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Follow Ben's new podcast.
Yeah.
Follow and subscribe to Ben.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Later.
I'll stay on for a little bit in case people have questions. Or Ben, you're welcome to stay on too, talk about your new podcast, but you probably have guests to book.
I will actually probably should get off, but
right.
but yeah, thank you. Or I don't know. I mean, like I could stay on for a minute. I mean, what do you
Yeah, stay on. Anyone have questions for Ben, for me or Ben? I hate when people say for Ben or I. Terrible.
Yeah, that sounds a little weird.
It's not correct, guys. It's just not correct.
The rule is that if you didn't have the Ben or in the sentence, how would you say it?
Yeah,
you would say, "Do you have any question for
I?" I know it's so embarrassing. People always do that. Between you and I feel badly. That's not correct either.
Yeah. Right. Yep. These are all the rules, about how to use I and me and who mayors can date. It's good
you've
stuff.
learned a lot of that. Yeah. How did you get into this, Ben? Were you always political? Do you come from a political family?
Yeah. Yeah, somewhat. Right. Like, I mean, my parents were like leftists in like the, late 60s, early 70s, like, not really by the time I, came along, although I was, I mean, not that they'd like, I mean, just in that, like, they weren't like super political at that point. Although I do remember, I was just thinking the other day, I'm 40, and the first political conversation I ever remember having was when I was 4 years old. It would have been November 1984. And as a 4-year-old, apparently I understood that there had been some kind of election, or that there had been something called an election and somebody won. I must have gotten that. I remember coming downstairs, my dad was reading the newspaper, and I said, "Oh, who won?" And him just having this look of sadness and disgust and anger on his face as Reagan.
Yeah. I was a big Dukakis fan when I was a child. I'm a year younger than you. So I was, 7?
Okay.
Really into... I actually like Jesse Jackson. But my parents flipped a coin over who to vote for in the primary, which is weird because they lived in New York. Someone asked, because they both like Jackson, but they, I guess, thought Dukakis was more electable. Book that most influenced you. Thank you, Joseph, for that question.
Yeah, wow. Overall, I don't know. Could I cheat and say like 3 relatively recent books that
all of which you wrote?
Yeah. I'm just gonna list off the stuff I wrote. Just be like, I've never been influenced by anything anybody else has written. It's just all like popping out, like Athena to Zeus. But no. So I think 3 relatively recent books that have all in their own ways changed how I've thought about different political things are Thomas Frank, Listen Liberal, and
Same.
Yep. and your Useful Idiot co-host book, Hate Inc., which is like really interesting on media stuff. And I was thinking about a lot actually during that earlier conversation. And Bhaskar Sankara, the Socialist Manifesto, since like I think that one is, you know, I don't know. I feel like that book doesn't get enough love. Like it's very like, I think like just in terms of being this like, it's like not the super theoretical thing. I think you could like give that book to a lot of people. And in terms of like the first chapter, especially in terms of like trying to think through what a post-capitalist society might actually look like that doesn't just sound like a ridiculous fantasy, but you could actually imagine happening. I think that's like a really valuable book.
Cool. Mine would have to be some love Patricia Highsmith. Just love her. Not that influential, I guess, on my political ideology. What would be? I actually Listen Liberal and Hate Inc. were big ones, especially Listen Liberal, I got to say. Because it woke me up to the idea that we think that Dems are cowards, but they're actually both cowards and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though it was published, or I guess, you know, I don't know, it came out in like summer 2016. So even though like Bernie Sanders is never mentioned in it, right? You know, like it wasn't written recently enough to include the primary. Like I remember like when I actually listened to that book, I would like take my dog on walks and like listen to the audiobook. And I remember like when I finished it, it was like, oh, this is like this perfect code key to like what just happened in the Democratic primary, because this book is such a clear explanation of what the Democratic Party is, you know, like, so like everything about like the Democratic establishment, you know, coalescing against Bernie and all that stuff, you know, makes so much more sense. And like, he's not coming out of, you know, of like any kind of like explicitly Marxist tradition, but like essentially it's this like really, you know, even if he's, you know, just, you know, progressive populist, it's like a very,
I'm here for it.
Essentially, yeah, totally right. Essentially, it's like this really sharp, like really well written, like class analysis of the Democratic Party, and it's like once you kind of get what he's saying about how okay, this isn't just that they're cowards. It's not just that like they're sellouts or whatever.
Inept,
but like, yeah, that there's this like what they have is this conception of progressivism that's like, where like what they see as social justice is having exactly the right percentage of Black CEOs and gay CEOs. And, you know, it's like letting like to them injustice just is anything that blocks the meritocracy from working how it should. And the best and the brightest from each group rising to the top. So like if there's a, you know, if there's like a glass ceiling for some group, that's a problem, right? But like, if there's like no floor whatsoever for how much people at the bottom of society can be brutalized, you know, like they don't even register that, you know, it's like things like job losses, deindustrialization, like in that worldview, that's like complaining about the weather, you know, that's like just like this natural process, you know, there's nothing to be done about that, right? Like justice or injustice is about like what the identity composition of the ruling class is. Yeah,
totally. And also, he's kind of like the progressive populist version in a way of the Adolf Reed on this issue of the, you know, disproportionate, the limits of the limits of disparity discourse and disproportional discourse, which I think is still a good gateway drug. A gateway concept to reach people who aren't necessarily that class conscious or don't care about class as much. It's still a really good, I think, entry point.
Totally right. Like that. Like I mean, like I've thought about that a lot. You know, with all the police violence unrest, it's like okay, you know, it's like I mean, it's good to talk about. Like, it's important to talk about how racial bias is a component in police violence, of course, but it's also okay. One, like the main reason for the disparity is that Black people are more likely to live in the neighborhoods that are being brutalized in these ways, right? You know, and two, would we really accept that as like, okay, now exactly the right proportions of Black people and white people are being murdered, so everything's fine?
Right. Yeah. Actually, I had Christian Parenti on, who has a new book about radical Hamilton, but I had him on to talk about a piece he had in Jacobin that's all about that and how it is about, poverty is more racialized in the South. No, poverty is less racialized in the South.
Right.
Right. Because there are just lots more.
There are more poor white people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting the stats that he looks at about police killings. And then someone asked, where is this? There's a populism question. What do you see as the unity and divergence of socialism and populism? I see good and bad socialism and good and bad populism. Well, let me just say that we had on, great episode, we had Thomas Frank on, Useful Idiots. And we had him on and he talked about his book, The People Know. Yeah. And his whole thing is that that's not actually, there is no populism. He traces it to a specific historic moment that takes place on a train after a conference, a convention. And for him, it really isn't. It's become a kind of both sides term, but that's not its origin story. And he sees the anti-populist framing of populist as something that could be on the right as part of a kind of an anti-populist effort. But I've actually, I'm not done with it, but I have been reading that book, which is really good. But yeah, I mean, I think that populism, so I mean, I guess to like directly answer the question, I think that like the good kind of populism, the sort of like progressive, economic populism, like it's different from socialism just in the sense that it's like you're starting to make some of the right connections that like, okay, there are, it's not just like people making mistakes about which policies are going to help everybody, that like that like what's happening to us reflects the economic interests of people in elite positions. And that's great, right? You're starting to make that connection, but like maybe you haven't gotten all the way to, some of the stuff Nando was talking about earlier about like the working class as an agent of change and like maybe like capitalism itself being the problem, and all of that. But also I think it is important to get at the way that populism, like you said, has become like this both sides term that like right now, like both like maybe some gullible people say like, oh, Tucker Carlson's not so bad, he's a populist, right? And they're just, and like it's a super low standard, right? That like you occasionally make some kind of vaguely populist rhetorical noises and you don't even support raising the minimum wage. But also that like for centrists, like condemning populism is this like really convenient way of like lumping together like Sanders and Trump.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So annoying. They're both anti-TPP. So is now the Sierra Club, like every progressive,
right.
ones I don't particularly like. Someone says, Ben, would you ask Anna and Cenk to stop belittling those traumatized victims of the American fear-mongering machine as COVID idiots?
Well, okay. First of all, no, right? I'm not gonna.
You're not their keeper?
Yeah. Cenk, I don't know. Anna's awesome, but but in any case, I'm not going to scold them about any of that, right? I do think that like, and look, I don't know exactly what they said about that, whatever, but like I think that I mean I think that you can find people saying like really idiotic things about the COVID, and like that's not necessarily bad to say that, right? Like I think the maybe germ of truth in what the person is complaining about, like aside from the
germ, very good, well done, subconscious. Yeah.
There we go, subconscious pun, subconsciously intended, But I think that like the part that's true underneath the, I guess the next time I talk to Anna, I'm supposed to yell at her about like her.
No, you don't have to yell at her. Call her in, not out.
Okay, yeah. I love it when people say that and they're serious.
You heard what this person wants them to do to people who are who they're describing as COVIDiots.
Right. Yeah, I love that idea. Is like calling in. It's like no, you just like gently explain to people that they are incorrect.
Yeah.
But yeah, look. But that aside, right? Like I do agree with part of the underlying thing, which is that like a lot of the like right-wing energy about like complaining about lockdowns and things like that, even though obviously they're taking a politically horrible direction, there is like a real thing there, which is that like we haven't provided anything like the kind of economic support that people would need to do this. And so, of course, some people are going to come to bad right-wing conclusions from that, and we shouldn't be totally dismissive of that. That part I agree with.
Yeah, totes. Yeah, I agree. It can be very, can be very condescending, and it's also a bad political strategy. It's alienating.
Right.
We can't just, call them a bunch of deplorables. By the way, Thomas Frank will be coming on my show, this show, next Wednesday, August 19th. Yeah. Okay, cool. And, we'll have to talk about this another time, but I actually do think that there's something like, what do we call, because there are some overlaps, and we don't have to call it populist, but like protectionism, maybe like Tucker Carlson and Pat Buchanan. I think we can acknowledge that there are some things that they are correct on, if not for the right reasons.
I think, right.
And I think sometimes people are like, that position is shared by Tucker Carlson. It's like, well, again, Trump opposes the TPP.
Yeah, right. Like, you certainly, and sort of opposed the Iraq War.
Right, in rhetoric at least. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he condemned that. Yeah. And he's rhetorically anti-interventionist. Right.
Right. Yeah, right. Like, I guess what I just say about Carlson, did an article for Third Rail about this called "Will the Real Right-Wing Populists Stand Up?" Please stand up. And I guess I just say it's like, yeah. I mean, look, like the fact that somebody like Tucker Carlson is anti-TPP is good, and that's like even no matter how he came to the position, and like I guess that kind of protectionism maybe is in common with people who are on the left, but like I also think like sometimes like I don't know. I mean, we just need to like have higher standards about this stuff, because it's like it's so minimalistic, right? Like I'm pretty sure like the Republican Party up until like probably like the 70s, right, was more protectionist than like Carlson or Trump or any of these people are now. And nobody thought that was because they were like standing up for the little guy against the economic elites. They just didn't want American businessmen to have this kind of competition, from foreign companies. And it really is like kind of amazing how much credit they get for like just these like really small rhetorical gestures, because like, again, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Josh Hawley, any of these people, like if they were really like saying some like economic redistributionist stuff and also they were crazy racist, then we'd like have this like kind of hard problem about, okay, like to what extent can you, to what extent should like Bernie Sanders or whoever try to work with them on the good stuff or whatever? Like there would be like a complicated thing there, but it's like they aren't even, right? Like they're not, like none of these people support like raising the minimum wage in any meaningful way. None of them support Medicare for all, like they're actually really like, they're just regular Republicans who have different branding. And like, maybe if Bannon had gotten his way in the Trump administration, they would have raised taxes back to like more like what they were in the Clinton era and like spend some money on infrastructure. But that seems kind of hard to get excited about as far as populism goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's I also think that there's something with like foreign policy. There's often this thing that happens where I think the punchline is that like, why does the liberal media suck so much on anti-war stuff? Not that like Tucker Carlson's isolationism is admirable or kind of like peacenickish or anti-warish, but I do think that like I know people who go on that show, and I do think that like the outcry should not be against that. It should be against why you have to go on that network.
Right. Like I think, I also think like that kind of like guilt by association thing that like you went on this show, therefore like instead of like actually taking issue with anything that you said while you were there, right? Like Glenn Greenwald is a terrible person because well, not just, of course, because he committed power imbalance, by marrying somebody younger than him.
Younger,
but,
and also Latinx, a Brazilian, and he's yeah.
Not just because of that, but he's also evil
Asian,
because
white,
he's gone. He's basically the stepdad of his husband.
Exactly,
because he's older and white.
It's not the actual dad,
yeah.
I love when people call him a fascist, by the way. He lives under fucking Bolsonaro and has been like threatened by Bolsonaro's family. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, right. Like, also not to mention that, like, this is the guy who spent like a decade being like the main person, like raising the alarm bells about like civil liberties and drones and, and publishing leaks. Is now like really like been like seriously threatened for doing the same thing against actual fascists in Brazil. But he went on a right-wing show, so even if he wasn't saying anything on the right-wing show, he wouldn't say in The Intercept or wherever else. That means that like he caught the like right-winger cooties from Tucker Carlson.
Right. Yeah. Or the other thing is the discourse of amplifying. Because if you're actually like a smaller presence than someone else, you're not you are being amplified by them.
Right. Yeah. No, I love this so much. Like that, like when like people were mad at me because I did a debate with Stefan Molyneux and therefore platformed him, even though Stefan Molyneux's platform is like 20 times bigger than any of ours are, like it's, like people, like I saw people who said that like Slavoj Žižek shouldn't have platformed Jordan Peterson, whose book, is like in every like college bookstore in the English speaking world and like has been for 2 years, but it's like, no, you're like committing the sin. Like you're talking to him, therefore you're giving him a platform, even if people are way more likely to hear of you for the first time through him than vice versa.
Right. Yeah. You're getting the exposure, not the other way around. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, this was really great. And tell us about your podcast and what it's about and how it's different from your show. From your video show, sorry, from the Zero.
Oh, yeah. So I've done a bunch of videos for Zero Books, kind of starting with the lead up to the book coming out. And then, kind of off and on since then. And those tend to be like long form things that are just like, me talking about some argument for 20 minutes or something. But yeah, this is a new thing. So the show is called Give Them an Argument. And it's, you can get that on YouTube or download it from all the usual podcast places. So the first episode just came out. I was talking to Matt Leck from the Michael Brooks Show and historian Harvey J.K. and Jacobin editor Bhaskar Sankara, and then at the end Liza Featherstone to talk about like DSA victories in New York, episode 2, is being recorded this weekend. People can actually sit in on it on Zoom, but then it's going up on YouTube and as a podcast. And talking to David Griscom. I'll be committing the sin of platforming a libertarian who I disagree with, Dave Smith, and then Lee Phillips is the co-author of People's Republic of Walmart. And then at the end of that, Anna Kasparian. So I guess that'll be my opportunity to chive her for saying co-videos.
Call her in, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And so you do it on Zoom, and then so it's not live, but you videotape it and then you release it on, or is it live? You do Zoom live? Zoom?
No. Yeah, it's like live to tape, So it's it's recorded. It's recorded on Zoom. And again, I've been posting like Twitter links and stuff, so anybody who wants to, can sit down on it and ask a question or whatever. And then Forrest, who also does video editing stuff for TMBS and Jacobin, and is very good at that, is like edited up on Sunday, so it can go up on YouTube on Monday and go out as a podcast on Monday.
Oh, great. So you're okay. So you're basically doing what you were doing, not to make it sound derivative or boring or not, but you're turning what your types of, you're doing what you're doing, but you're adding to it in terms of length, and you're also making it audio and video.
Yeah, right? and having guests.
And with guests, right? That's the thing that you don't usually have, right? I always, yeah. All right, cool. So people want some Anna Kasparian, Katie Halper debate. We actually did briefly debate something once on the Young Turks about Russiagate. I was saying that I'd rather Trump not be not be harder on Putin.
Yeah. Well, right. I'm with you there. So the list of things to call her in on is just growing and growing.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a conference. Yeah, convention. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thank you.
Come back. Great. Bye. All right. Any other questions? Talk as simply as possible. I was seeing if my friend was going to come on the show, but I don't think he is. This is fun though. When Ford sold. Okay. Aubrey fangirl. Let's see. Oh, let me just check something. One second. The Ewok. Oh yeah. I'll bring out the Ewok next time. She's so cute. All right. Yeah, I will I think this has been good. Bye everyone. See you guys. Yeah, it's a piggy bank or it's just a pig sculpture, I'm not sure. But I will see you guys on Sunday. Jack will be my co-host. Yeah, and then the next Wednesday will be Thomas Frank. And I will bring Bodhi. She's so cute. I'll bring Bodhi next week. Yeah. And I don't know who people are underestimating me in a fight. All right. Bye, everyone. Oh, please support the show. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. You can just, you can give as little as $1 a month. Pretty cool, right? And please hit like. Please subscribe. Please share these videos. And yeah, give me ideas if you want. I'm thinking of doing some scripted videos also. I have some ideas that I'm going to do those things about. Sorry, I'm a little inarticulate right now. But yeah, if you have any ideas about things that you would like explainers about or anything like that, then let me know because I have some coming down the pike. Okay. Oh, wait, I may have, hold on, let me see if my friend wants to do this. I'm sure, hold on. One second. Sometimes when I start doing these, I'm like, why not just keep going? It's probably better to do shorter ones more frequently, but Thomas Frank is coming on Wednesday. Yeah, Chuck Todd sucks so much. No, it's not on you. Tim Dillon on Conflict Diamonds. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay, so no, my friend's gonna come on tomorrow. I do some edits. How short should they be? Because I do some edits. Please consider editing your show in post-production to present shorter topical segments. Well, I have some of those on YouTube. Did you see that? Like, what are you thinking? What is it that you would like to see? How short? Here, I'm gonna go on my why are my eye hold on, let's see. Let's see. I got wow. Well, I did a 12-minute Max Blumenthal on Susan Rice being a servant of empire that got 11,000 views. That's pretty good. I did a Dear Dems, Susan, let's see. MSNBC Hack Chuck Todd, Red Bates Karen Bass. That was 10 minutes. I did a 9-minute watch the DNC vote type thing. I did a 5-minute Beirut-based journalist Rania Kalik thing. Just looking at my videos. Tim Black on third party or Biden. Yeah, what kind of videos would you like to see? Like more topical in what way? I did a how voting blue no matter who helps Trump with Brianna Joy Gray. That was a shorter one. Nina Turner on Trump's Gotta Go. Lessons from Bernie. Bountygate update with Aaron Mate on Syria. Seth Rogen thing. Lesser of Two Evils thing. Marianne Williamson saying the Dems are more performative than Trump. A Joe Kennedy thing. Yeah, so I have these things, but tell me what you would like to see more of. No, I'm like, let's say you could do Biden and Kamala super hits episode, not too depressing. So like mashups and stuff more as opposed to scripted thing about the difference in the media woke reaction to Morse allegations versus Reid Biden allegations. Yeah. Oh yeah, that would be interesting, right? Because people are pretending that Assad, you want more Assad? Let me see. Let's see if I just like your in the moment commentary of the now issues. Like what? Like just like my rants. Let's see. I wrote to. How do I know if I economics and mind disparity? Let's see. I'm gonna try to get on. Definitely gonna try to get on Adolf Reed. Everyone should like. By the way, go look at Alex Morse's Twitter page, and he's so great. On Twitter, he is, let's see. God, all these people really owe him an apology. Alex P. Morse. No, let's see. Alex B. Morse. That's his name on Twitter. So follow Alex B. Morse. Also go to alexmorseforcongress.com. He's so great. He really is great. Also, Melba from Miami. Check her out because she, again, is running against that devil woman. Melba from Miami is the good person. Go to Melba from Miami, and she's running against the devil that is Catherine Fernandez Rundle, who's just absolutely the worst. I would love to watch a debate. Oh my God, between her and the devil. What else? Nomiki, okay, yeah. Let's see. Wait, Jan Perelman, I've had her on, but I'll have her on again. Do shows on why Bernie dropped out. It is a mystery. I know you love Bernie, but there's a real question here. Of course, I think it's I'm more upset than anyone else about that. Hold on. Oh, thank you, Richard Burt. Thank you. Thank you very much. Isha, Oliver Stone, Richard Metters, Jen Perlman, election this week. Cornel West. I would love to have Cornel West. What's the... Oh, Tim. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Biden bros are terrible, and so are K-Hive bros. Oh, good, you voted for Melba. Great. Well, I'll say this about the Shahid thing. I think that people rescinded their endorsement without waiting to see. It's up to people what they want to rescind their endorsements about. I think that there's a discourse about, like there's a particular struggle right now around the discourse of Me Too and abuse. And I'm not even saying that like, oh, I like this idea. I'm not saying it's true. I think that that there is a tendency to conflate or kind of flatten everything into one thing. So I think that there's a big difference between yelling at your employees or being rude to your employees and doing Me Too-ish things. And I don't think that those things, I mean, there's overlap in them, but I would say that there are important differences. And I think if people want to like go out on a limb and say, you know what, I'm going to rescind my endorsement because I don't like the way Shahid spoke to his staff, then that's one thing. But that is pretty different from kind of the thing that reminds me of Morse about the Shahid thing is it's also kind of a hodgepodge. It's like there was a Me Too allegation, but people kind of stayed away from that for various reasons. And then they combined that with people who worked for him saying he was abusive, but not in any like physical way. I'm not downplaying abuse, but it was not very Me Too-ish. And then like one of the things that was really weird is that they brought up in the article how much money he made, that he made $100,000 a year. I don't really think that that's like relevant. And that struck me as a weird thing to put in. And it struck me as not being about harassment. That struck me as like, why is this an issue? People are allowed to pay themselves. People do that so that they don't have to be rich in order to run for office. Rebecca Parsons did that, I believe. So yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. What else is there? Fault lines and others are claiming the Beirut bombing was Israel linked. That would be a great topic. Yeah, it's interesting. I had I didn't have a debate like in real time, but I had Jim Zogby on, and then I had Max Blumenthal on, and they obviously have very different takes on that. Thank you, Linda Lee. So a Muslim friend challenged me for not wanting to vote Biden because she worries about emboldened racists and risking death. I felt very white privilege for saying never Biden. Yeah, that's a real thing. I mean, that is a real issue, and I'm not sure what to say about that. Again, it's kind of easy for me as a person who lives in New York. I don't have to deal with that. I don't know. It's an interesting debate. I should have. I'm curious what like Eugene would say about that. Not that he's Muslim, but as someone who would be on the receiving end of racism in a way that a white person isn't. And it's different. I mean, anti-Black racism is different from Islamophobia and the hate crimes. Although, you know what, more hate crimes apparently are against Jews. Like percentage-wise, those have gone up the most. But that doesn't really, you know. Well, first of all, no one's walking around that much in COVID, but I certainly that's the type of thing that doesn't like affect me. In, you know, I'm not at risk as a Jew walking down the street. If that makes any sense. Yeah. What else? Very good sangria. What else? Let me know. Any more questions? Yeah, I really like Morse. He's great. No, let's see. Yeah, I'll have more info on some of these stories that I'm referring to. Useful idiots, I can't tell. You'll have to wait until Friday. What else? I think part of myself did or collective citizenry very challenging. Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that question of the white privilege. Can we have class outside next time? Yeah. Yeah, I would love to have on Dave Griscombe. Yeah, well, you stand Teen Vogue. That's funny. My friend Samita works there. Let's see. I feel bad. I didn't really answer that question about the white privilege thing. So, a Muslim friend challenged me for not wanting to vote Biden. Are you in a swing state? That's a good question. If you're in a swing state. Did I put a Trump 2020 sticker on voting? No. I wonder how much that stat is also because the anti-First Amendment laws are definitely hate crimes against Jew up in the Trump era. That's true, yeah. But I can't really say like I'm not going to say like, well, I'm a Jew and the hate crimes against us are up, so don't tell me. Well, a couple things. One is I'm not in a swing state. Second of all, I'm not saying that if I were in a swing state, I would say never Biden. And I certainly can't speak to that, to the fear of walking down the street and being more targeted, because from what I can tell, right, like the attacks on Jews are done in or around synagogues, right? Or, you have to be identifiable in some way, which I, depending on who you talk to, people have compared my voice to Fran Drescher, but I don't know if I'm, it's not the same thing as walking down the street as while being another insert something else. Who's Mr. Fish? That's it. Yeah. Didn't they bomb? Antifa ban. Joe Biden supports genocide. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Biden supported the CIA's insurgent army in the Syrian civil war, not exactly supporter of peace in the Middle East. What's interesting is that the friends who are the most kind of anti-empire and anti-war, friends and guests like Rania Kalik and Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate, who are both very who are much more critical of the Dems than a lot of other people. They're also very much. Oh no, I have to have Lee Camp on. Good reminder. I will. They're also very much. They very much see Trump as the harm reduction. Sorry, oh my God, I always did that. See Biden as the harm reduction candidate, which I do think is interesting. I don't know who Vaush is. Mr. Fish, Dwayne Booth. What else? We didn't really talk enough about this, but there is a lot of interesting discussion about Mr. Fish. Oh yeah. Okay. Anyone really into editing? Because I always have more content that could be turned into short clips. If anyone wants to. Wow, I just saw an expression of myself where I looked very. What else? Serious question. How do you so consistently steal our hearts? Oh, that's sweet. Katie. Oh, I don't mean the way I look. That's just an expression. But yeah, I'm a woman who. Can you scroll up a bit? I said something intense. Okay, I'm looking for this intense thing. Where's the intense thing? Where's the intense thing? I wish I could search this by name. Oh, the erosion of the specific meaning of Me Too is really terrifying, to be honest. I used to think I'd be able to use it one day if my rapist was elevated to office somehow, but now it just means nothing. Yeah, there's that. Yeah, Me Too is like it's used in an interesting, yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's like it on the one hand, Me Too is used to Me Too is definitely weaponized inconsistently, and I still believe in the principles of Me Too and listen to women and believe women. But it is interesting how sometimes Me Too means just immediately vote for immediately hold on one second. Immediately disassociate, condemn, denounce someone, or it can also mean on the other end of the spectrum, like wait forever before you talk about someone or something. David Graeber, Michael Hudson, Tim Dillon. I love Gore Vidal, yeah. Assange would love it too. What else? I can also just, come on another time. I just sometimes when I'm on, I like to, because I'm already on. What else? I'd love to have Barry Weiss on. All right, maybe I will. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can have all right, one second. Hold on. One second. What else could we do? Let's see. Michael Hudson. Barbara Ehrenreich. I'd love to have her. Australian culture. Mark Fisher. Yeah, I'd love to have Jesse Ventura on. My worry with Harris is VP. If Biden wins, no sitting VP has ever lost their party's nomination. How does a left challenger break through in 2024 so that the left doesn't get totally shut out? It's a good question. Yeah, we really have to build up the left so we have power, because as of now, again, Kamala is totally malleable. It's like they're malleable until they're between. She has no ideology. I actually think probably Biden is more of an ideologue than Harris. I actually very much do think that's true. So which can be a plus and a negative depending. But what I do think about Harris is that she is very flexible, unprincipled. And I'm not praising Biden by contrast, but Biden, I do think, has certain ideological commitments. Oh, I'm going to have Gerald Horn on. Don't worry, I'm going to have Gerald Horn on. I do think Biden has certain ideological commitments, which means that Kamala is kind of a blank slate, who we could kind of, push, except how do we push her? Like, what are the pain points or the pressure points? That's true, but why not learn from someone who has read a whole book? What's that? I would love to have Amy Goodman on or Juan Gonzalez on. I should try to have her on. Dr. Harriet Fraud. Oh, I want to have both of them on. In fact, I'm going to reach out to them because I would love to have both of them on, each and or both. And I was trying to do that, and I'm going to do that again. Zephyr Teach Out. You'll see soon. Just stand by. Biden's ideological commitment is called corruption. I mean, yeah, I think he's awful. The thing is, you can be an ideologue and be awful. And thank you. Thank you, Ian. Good answer on Kamala Harris. Here's $5. I mean, I think Biden has a kind of like low key. He's like neocon light, I would say. He's not quite Hillary level hawk. I think Kamala doesn't care either way, really. Third fucking time my mail lady stole my migraine medicine. I can't do anything about it. Whoa. Okay. That's not good at all. Yeah. Talk about, what else? They call them suicide migraines. Ooh, okay. You should put your thumb and pointer finger like on this on your on the inside of your right hand. I don't know how to say this, but it's good for pain, for head aches apparently. What else? Yeah, the Dems are, I mean, this is scary. This is awful. I've done some good episodes on this with Bronco Marchetich. Also, who else talked about Biden on about Kamala Harris on my show? Bronco was good. I'll probably take them from behind the StreamYard, behind the paywall. Also, Trevor from Champagne Sharks. We did a good ep on with him. What else? God, I really can't believe who's running. I also have a good email episode coming out. Yeah, I would definitely say talk about the People's Party is trying to draft Jesse Ventura to run. They're having a live event August 30th, I think. Oh, cool. CS is good. What's CS? We need to wait. What's up with MSM claiming Kamala is more progressive than Bernie, even though they call Bernie an ideologue? I don't even know what that means. Check on Bailey. We need or organize fellow Halper show fans. What does that mean? Interview Kamala's dad. Yeah, I would totally do that. Katie, get someone who has serious ideological differences on. Yeah, that would be good. Who would that be? I disagree with a lot of people, but I mean, Matt and I disagree a lot. I got to have him on. Marcus Reidecker. Oh, that's cool. That sounds really interesting. Candace Owens' story. Yeah, they're going to blame Biden no matter what. What else? Yeah, I think that's it, right? I think we all learned a lot again, as I like to say. Any other questions? Run for office. Yeah, right. Organize equals having party. Am I Marxist? Yes, I am a Marxist. Interview Trump. Buttigieg's dad is not alive, but he was a Gramsci translator. I noticed have you had Robert Kennedy Jr. on? No, I would love to have on. Let's see. Oh, Mara Wilson. Let's see. Robert Kennedy. No, I would have Markey on though. Meghan McCain would love to do that. Oh, CS equals Champagne Shark. Sorry. Larry Kudlow. That'd be great. Mirsa Baradaran. How do I save all these comments? Because I want to copy and paste them. Yeah, I'm not a big Brett Weinstein fan. Drug war. Your thoughts against it? Why Rob Kennedy to debate him? You mean? Yeah, I think Obama was an ideologue a little bit. I mean, no, he was an ideologue, a bit less of an. I don't know. Everyone is powerful is a terrible combination of ideologue and total sellout. You were fantastic. What would I like? Maybe not. Wait, I can't read this. Others, rants and daily news, including world news. Your takes tend to pick up news skipped by so many. You guys should give me tip. Like you should write down what I should comment on. What else? Misty Comrade Putin and Beth. So yeah, that'd be good. Do a crossover interview with Doug Lane from Zero Books. Interview an ex-QAnon true believer. Are the BLM protests going to bury Harris as an ally? I doubt it. Why do U.S. unions suck? Brunig. Oh yeah, I would have Brunigs on. I've had them on, but yeah, I should have them on video. Thanks. Yeah, so many views. The show's grown so much. Thanks. Yeah. Get True and On back. Yeah, I should get them back. Oh, Surveillance Capitalism book. No, that's not Yasha Levine's, right? I'll get him on though. Brunigs are pretty based. What's that? Oh yeah, I edit and someone else edits on Premiere. I just had a question about literally I just had a question about how to edit things when they're already up on YouTube because I wanted to cut something out that was already up. Okay, I'm starting my own show devoted exclusively to explaining these simple principles to the masses so they can learn how to exert their power. Bruce Levine is a historian who focused on slaves fighting Confederates. Oh, that's interesting. Peter Beinart. Oh, yeah, I'd like to have him on. Robbie Martin, yeah. Base means dank. Okay, but dank in what way? Thanks for being an ally and ending the war on drugs. You're the best, Katie. Of course. I mean, I don't know. I would love to help, but I don't know what I can do. I'll sign something. What are your thoughts on the Fed pumping billions in stock market while the rest of us are going homeless? Not good. Matt's good about that. Matt should talk about that. Ronald Purser wrote McMindfulness, how mindfulness became. Oh, that looks really interesting, actually. Especially because I write, I've had a lot of episodes about mindfulness lately. It's so depressing when you go into your inbox and there's like nothing more in like the same stuff as same bad stuff is still at the top of your inbox. Richard Wolff, I definitely want to have him on. Oh yeah, I want to have on Amy Villela. I want to have Cori Bush back on. I've had her on. Oklahoma and the Dakotas are having their issues. Yeah. I gotta have Abby Martin back on. I want to have Michael Preisner on. Michael Hudson. Who's the person who was? Hold on. Oh, I was thinking Michael Hastings. That's who it was who died. Yeah. Wolf and Hudson. Oh, Native American issues. Yes, I want to have. Who's a good guest for Native American issues? Because I actually really want to do something on that. Where is that? Who would be a good guest for that? Shoshana Zuboff. Okay. You know what's so funny? It's really annoying though. Like, oh yeah, Benjamin Studebaker. Becker. Oh yeah, the Red Nation podcast. Wait, is that Liz Warren? Wait, the Red Nation podcast. I went on Chapo. I was on their bonus episode. Red Nation podcast. What's that? Thunder Bay. Did you guys, anyone watch that? Thunder Bay, I believe it's called. Who did Thunder Bay? Oh, Nick Estes. Who hosts that? I see Nick Estes was on it. Yeah, I really liked what's it called? I really liked what's it called? Thunder Bay. I gotta have someone on from that. What about a little what? Oh, I want to have Johan Hari back on. Is it called Thunder Bay, the podcast? Is it called something else? No, it is Thunder. Yeah, really good. I really want to have Ryan McMahon. Is that his name? Oh, they have another season? Oh. Chat North Ontario. Is that it? Oh, season 2. Great. Yeah. I got to get in touch with them. Thunder Bay. Yeah, I got to get in touch with him. Canada Land Commons. Cool Mules. What's that? Cocaine. I want some Australian people up in here. Yeah. Up in here. Yeah. Taste Buds. What else? The Imposter. Weirder. Thunder Bay. Yeah, I really like Thunder Bay. Wag the Dog. That's funny. Good old Doug Ford. Yeah, I'm gonna try to get Thunder Bay on here. The whole gang. Okay, what else? Australia isn't real. Is Chomsky still alive? Yeah, I want to get Chomsky on. That would be good, right? Oh my God, my friend just sent me a screenshot, a photo. It says Biden. It's a Biden. It's a Biden yard sign. It says Biden touches kids. Okay, sorry. I'm tired. All right. Well, hold on 1 second. Bill McKibben, yeah. We had Chomsky on. Wow, there's an apology. That's great for Morse. All right, great. I will reach out to all of these people. Okay. Michael Moore actually is going to come on. Apparently, I think. Leonard Peltier, yeah. What about some musicians? That'd be good, right? All right. Well, guys, this was really fun. I'm going to chop this up into a bunch of episodes. Oh, cool. I wrote my law review article on the American issues. Well, put in a link. I don't, what can I do? Mark Charles, Native American, running for wait, where is this? Katie, do a view type format with some dits, a rabid libertarian, and inflatable crab. You can play the Joy B role. That's funny. You know, Joy Behar is not Jewish. Isn't that funny? Roger Waters. Why are you body shaming Michael Moore? Noam. What else? Oh, Mark Charles, Native American running for prez as independent. He's really good on race issues. Great. Cool. Yeah, put in a bunch of articles here. Kelton, yeah. All right. This is very fun. Morse. Oh, good. Justice Debs, great. Boots Riley. If anyone knows about Boots Riley, please hook it up. Yeah, I'll have Nathan Tankus on. Okay. Kelton and Wolf together, yeah. Cardi B would love that. Yeah, Boots Riley would love that. Hook it up. If anyone knows. I don't know, it's a Pure Wharf thesis. Okay. So yeah, put all the links in here. And again, thank you guys, and I'll see you Sunday. Talib Kweli, he does not like me. He's an interesting fellow on Twitter. I'll just say that. I think he accused me of viewing him as a slave because I was explaining something about Tara Reid to him. That was interesting. Okay. Massey. Oh, you think I should have an email? An email list? I should, right? All right. John Kane. Okay. Didn't who get banned? Oh, I don't know. He needs to calm down though. I mean, in general, he's like very not chill. And I say this as someone who's not chill either, but it's very angry. I don't know why he responds to people who have like no followers who go after him. It's so weird. I had Rokana on. In fact, I'm going to release the interview that I did with him. Katie Port. Oh, I would love to have Warren Gunnels on. Discord server subreddit. Sure. Can someone organize that? A text mail list. Use notification. Yeah. I have a what is it? MailChimp, I believe. Okay. Well, I will see everyone on Sunday. And have a good night. Yeah. Bye. Oh, wait, guys. Let me just put this in here. Yeah, I would love to have Ilhan Omar on. Just got to put this link in here. I mean, it is my name, but here. Oh, I would love to have Jim Hightower on. Guys, just $1 a month. That's $12 a year, and you can support the show. Edit.